Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day from fragging noobs and posting retarded memes on the internet to listen to this interview. With me as your host, Eric Beans, and my special guest today is someone that needs no introduction, but you're going to get one anyway. He's the man who puts the salt in Salt Factory, the playa in multiplayer, the man, the myth, the legend, the owner, the Alpha. Welcome, Alpha, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview.
And thank you for actually making this entire interview happen in the first place. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so it's Saturday about noon, exactly noon, actually. It's 6 o'clock your time. And the reason for doing this is that, that podcast that you and Rot and Dennis did was great, right? A lot of fun. Listen to you guys banter back and forth. And then my issue came with at the end when there was a question section and literally nobody had a question, which, boggled my mind because, right, what happens to you every time you log into the server? People start peppering you, right?
Exactly.
And I was like, nobody could think of a single question. I'm like, oh my God, because I got to listen to it later. I'm like, I got a billion, I got a billion questions. So I'm going to, and this is just for, did you tell anybody we were doing this?
I mentioned it to a few of my staff members, but I told them to keep it on the down low.
Yeah, okay. So I didn't tell anybody either as much as I wanted to. So we're going to start first with just some personal stuff. And also that, I did give you, 99.9% of all these questions ahead of hand, so you'd be prepared.
Yes.
But, I didn't want to shock you with anything. I may throw a little cringy questions in there, but, nothing you can't handle. So first of all, do you actually want to tell people what your actual first name is and how old you are?
Well, for my name, that's something I prefer to keep for the people who get more into my private zone.
Right.
I mean, you know my name right now just because of my name in TeamSpeak.
Oh yeah, I see it. Mm-hmm.
But for the other people, it's I'll keep it a bit of a goal to strive towards when people actually start becoming friends with me. As for my age, however, I am 23 years old.
So the other biggest question I have for you is why do you do this? What do you get out of it? Is it just fun for you? Resume enhancement? Is it just for practicing? Why do you actually host this server and do all this work?
The main reason why I do this is for fun, definitely. This is how it started back in 2014 when I was a player and I was just playing this game thinking I have a lot of ideas how to make things better. And I think I have the potential to make things better also just for me and for the friends who I was playing it with at that time.
So you're already an experienced coder at that point?
Not very experienced, but I knew I had a bit of a knack for it. This was still during my school time where I didn't do these kinds of things also for work. So it was still new waters for me, but it was something that I was looking forward to actually exploring.
So when you say school, do you mean college or high school?
It's kind of hard to explain with the German system, but basically the equivalent of being in your 11th year of school.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So is this actually what you do for a living? Coding.
Well, partially, yes. To elaborate a bit more on that, I do event IT for ESL Gaming. We do esports events. And also in big stadiums across the world. And my job there is to make sure the network works. So we order internet lines, we set up equipment across the entire location, we configure firewalls, we do these kinds of things. We also handle the Windows installations on the PCs and support off stage as well as on stage. And that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of my job. But
so you're an actual IT guy, not somebody who just codes.
Well, coding
because
people
I've met a lot of people in my years doing this work, and some people that's all they do. They don't know, they can't even fix a computer, but they can code.
Oh, those kinds of people. I've met these kinds of people as well. I actually do also physical stuff. My job even includes a lot of rolling cables and just carrying equipment around, plugging it in, these kinds of things. But then at the same time, that's where the coding part comes into play. In between events, when we have downtime, and I don't necessarily have to plan for the next event because someone else is doing it, I work on internal coding projects and server-related projects and things that will help us when events actually happen.
Do you basically live within the gaming world?
Yes, pretty much.
Pretty much, right? So would you say this is your favorite game, JC2, or do you have like something like, nah, that's garbage. I prefer much more to play something, give a computer name, right? I mean, something like that. Would you say this is like what really started you off in this? Do you really like this game a lot?
It's kind of hard to say. I was thinking about this, but I concluded that I've had so many good and bad experiences with Just Cause 2 over such a long time. It's actually hard for me to make a statement on whether I really like the game still. But of course, at some point, it was just a lot of fun to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten started with.
I
the
mean, like
entire thing.
aside from the hassle, right, of being with players, giving you a hard time. You just really like playing it. This type of game, right, where you can literally just. I mean, I liken JC2 into like being a you're an action hero that can literally just do anything. That type of thing,
Yes, but also like more in general, the open source,
right.
open world type of game. So I'm also like a big fan of the Grand Theft Auto games.
Yeah. I haven't gotten into that yet. So other than this server, and you do the DAGs where you do a lot of your testing, and you just recently started how do you say, is it Terraria?
Terraria. There's no second N in there. Actually, no N in the first place, actually.
Yeah, everybody knows I'm a bad speller. So
nice.
do you host any other servers? Do you plan on doing any other servers? And if you had planned on doing JC3 multiplayer, yes or no?
I do host other servers for other games. In particular, it's Insurgency. It's a shooter that I play a lot. I run 2 servers for that game, one for each type of PvP mode. They're doing reasonably well, but obviously, since it's not such a community-driven game, it's not a big source for more members in the community or anything. And I don't know many people in the Just Cause community who play a lot. I was looking at FiveM, the custom multiplayer mod type of thing for GTA 5. I like it a lot. It has a lot of possibilities, like Just Cause 2, a lot of options, but it's a gigantic commitment. And at this point, I'm not really looking to go into such a big commitment again.
So is the JC2 server your is that your grand success, would you say?
Yes, most definitely. And
so no JC3 ever, right?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, for JC3, there's one more thing to factor in, which is it was kind of dead on birth. JC3 never reached anywhere near the amounts of players that were playing Just Cause 2 multiplayer. So everyone who did decide, there were many people running Just Cause 2 servers who decided to also switch to Just Cause 3, but for most of them, it was just a disappointment. It was more effort than it was really.
Yeah, Dennis and I played one once. I don't know how, it was probably 2 years ago. It was a nightmare. It just wasn't as fun to play. It just seemed like obviously there was nobody there. We couldn't find each other, and we just kind of drove around in circles. We're like, let's just get out of here. So basically, when you're working on the server, do you work from home? Do you work at work? Do you sit on the couch, covered in Cheeto dust? Do you lie in bed? Where do you do this work, and what type of system do you actually do this with?
I do this on my normal gaming PC. It's like a slightly older, 2018-ish gaming PC. Just in my guest room. I do actually have a guest room here where I have my desk. And it's pretty much the same PC where I spend most of my free time at home at. So the same PC where I watch YouTube and play games.
Is this a computer you built, or is it a name brand?
Yes, it's a computer I built. Actually, I built it for a friend, and then he sold it to me when he stopped playing, which was quite funny.
Yeah. So do you ever want to, or have you ever met anybody from JC2 in real life?
Unfortunately, no. I got close at some point. There's one person who we're probably going to speak about again at a later point, but his grandparents live in Cologne, the same city where I live. So we were already in the same city at the same time, but we just never actually got together.
Are you full 100% German? Like, what's your background?
Yes. I am. Both of my parents are German. I was born here and I was raised here.
So then nothing's. Your both parents are like actual Germans.
Yes.
All right. So I'm not going to dig too deep into your life because privacy and all that. So let's get into the nerd stuff because I've seen this question asked of you like a million times, and you can always say, hey, when these questions come up again, you don't have to type it for the a million times. You can say, go listen to this interview and hear it. We're going to get into like the nerd stuff, which is the actual JC2 server. What is it? What kind is it? What are the specs? Hard drive? What speed is the internet? All that stuff.
So we're running on a server by a hosting company called Hetzner. It's a German one. It's a dedicated server, so it's it's not virtualized or anything. It's not a V server. It's an actual like physical piece of computer sitting in a data center that I have full control over. It is in a German data center fairly close to the Czech border. So there's actually a note for those people over in the US. Why their latency is slightly higher than to maybe a server running in London or in Amsterdam, because it's just further away from the ocean. It's running Debian Linux because it's just the server operating system I'm most familiar with. Has an i7 6700, which happens to be the same CPU that I also have in my private PC, like in my gaming PC. 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM, which is completely overkill for what I'm doing with it. And it has two 4 terabyte hard disks in the software RAID. So even if one disk goes down, we will still just continue running, and I can get that thing replaced. And as for the internet line, it has a gigabit symmetrical, so it can download at a gigabit per second. At the same time, it can upload with one.
Did you? I know you said it was a dedicated. Is there a name brand? Is it a Dell or something?
No, it's not a name brand. It's like more basically they slapped together a bunch of consumer grade hardware into a box that they can put into a rack or in a shelf, basically, and connect an Ethernet cable and power to it.
Now, I know I brought you. I don't know where this came up, but I know it came up at one point, and you can just confirm this. Is it true that your employer pays for the hosting because you're such a fantastic employee?
I don't know about the last part. I mean, I do my best, but I wouldn't call myself fantastic, I suppose. But yes, it is very true that my employer pays for it. Basically, how it happened was a few other colleagues from my department also had the server paid for them because they were kind of doing it as a job. So it was more of a support of furthering their skills in their private time as well. And I was getting into the topic of like Linux servers, so I just asked for it, and it was a pretty simple yes.
All right, so we're gonna now switch into like actual game, updates, changes, the mechanics, and I'm gonna throw like multiple questions at you at once. You can these are quick ones, and these are questions that you've been asked before. I'm sure I've asked them. So I'm gonna put 3 together here. One is, why are there no throwable grenades? 2, why are there no NPCs? And why is boost so limited to a certain speed?
All right, so for the throwable grenades, they do exist in single player, but not in multiplayer, just by default, pretty much. Like you can't give someone a grenade like they have it in single player, unfortunately. So it would I would basically have to code a workaround, like you can see it on some other servers.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
But I honestly don't see the point in doing it, like the point in putting effort into it, because the combat in this game is actually super dynamic. Like you have the grappling hook, you have the parachute. People go all over the place when they're in combat, and a grenade only has a limited amount of range. So either it has so little range it's not very effective, or it has so much range that people just start using it for griefing, like when there's a group of people standing somewhere.
Right.
None of which I think are like good ways to go about it.
You mean like the bearing?
We will get back to that in a bit.
Yeah. So the NPCs, why aren't there any, randos just walking around?
Because NPCs, there is an NPC framework, a pretty rudimentary one, but there's one. they are not the same NPCs as in single player. So once again, it's not like one of these cases where you can just say, "Oh, flip a switch," and things from the single player appear in the multiplayer. It's a thing that basically has to be coded entirely. So how the pathfinding, how NPCs find their way around, how they are synced between multiple players, so they see the same things going on, and yeah, it's also just kind of buggy from what I've seen so far. They are extremely resource hungry because they have to do a lot of calculations on what they are doing, and they require lots of work. And these things are already pretty much enough for me to exclude them as a feature on the server that I would actually sit down and put my time into.
Right.
But at the same time, I also prepare to like kind of keep the map a bit cleaner and like have it more focused on the players than a bunch of random NPCs walking around.
So we'll go to the boost question, but that helps us lead into the other question, which is because other servers have it. Why can't you add things to the terrain that weren't there before, like extra roads or ramps or stuff like that?
Actually, I have done that already in the form of the submarine. The submarine
you put the sub. There was something else too recently. You did.
Yes, you're thinking probably about the Cape Carnival runways.
The what is it?
The at Cape Carnival at the rocket launch base. There's I said that I fixed the runways there. It uses the same principle.
Oh, well, and then you added that boat, the Minerva or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, but that's an item in the spawn menu. That's not actually a fixed location on the map. It's not a static object.
I was it was either me or you or somebody else that it's basically it does adding terrain like roads or ramps or stuff like that. Does that slow the server down?
Not the server, but everyone's game. Yes, it does affect the frame rate. That's one of the reasons why I like not not necessarily avoid it entirely, but keep it as far on the down low as possible. Like just do it where absolutely necessary.
So I don't know all the Easter eggs, but I know there's two more. One is the everybody looks for the blimp or the balloon and the little shark that goes around in that little pond there.
Yes.
Any plans on adding those? If so, why not?
Oh yeah, true. People did bring that up before. I believe I looked into the files, but I couldn't actually find the objects for them. I can have a look again because I actually don't remember fully going on an extensive search for them. But it's just a tiny detail. The problem about these things is they are not synced across players anyways. So it would either require some additional like coding overhead to make sure everyone sees the same thing, or people would just randomly float in midair and people would be like, "Oh no, this guy's hacking." Well, on his screen he's sitting in a balloon. That's fine.
Right. Okay. So, and then the last part of the third question is, why is boost limited to a certain speed?
In basically the physics engine is the limit here. The physics engine has a certain limit how fast a vehicle can move within like reasonable bounds around Panau. So obviously if you go way beyond where a normal player should ever go, suddenly these limits break and don't apply to you anymore. But within these bounds, a vehicle just cannot go faster than that speed. Like the boost actually keeps boosting, but it just hits that hard limit that the physics engine dictates.
Is that like why you can go like 20,000 miles an hour when you're in space?
Yes, because that's an area where the game never intended you to be. So the rules of physics are a bit different.
All right. So, okay, as far as you've answered some of the questions that probably will follow up this next one. Is there just things that you just simply can't do? Like, can you tell us, like I know other people have asked you, and I know I've asked you a million times, why can't you get rid of those little damn stakes that crash you into a mountain every single time you hit them? Like, what can't you do? What won't you do? And there are things that you wish you could do, but are just not possible.
So the things that I can't do, generally speaking, there's a lot of like details here and there. Sometimes I can do things people wouldn't expect, and sometimes I can't do things people would expect. But on a general level, what I can't do is modify assets, like base game assets. So textures, models, effects, sounds, pretty much everything that a single player mod can do. Because I don't have the same, like I don't have any access at all to your every player's game files. This was a feature that was planned for Just Cause 2 to exist at some point, but it just never made it in before the developers went inactive. So that's something I cannot do. And I cannot modify a lot of other like single player like statistics / configuration wise things, which I also include in the game files. For example, vehicle stats, weapon stats, things like sprint speed, grapple count, things that are also normally done by single player modding or using a trainer or an external tool. So those are the things I just simply cannot do. To get into the things that I won't do, it's a bit more of a subjective one, but generally saying, I don't like things that will get too performance hungry. There are a few things that are really performance hungry, name tags being an example, the chat, this is basically just due to their nature. And the nature how they just happen. Like basically when you draw something on the screen, it has an impact on the performance. And when you draw a lot of things on the screen, like you do for a chat, it just gets very slow. But this is always like a kind of trade-off thing for me. If it is, if the feature is worth it, then I will consider going for something that may take more performance. But on a general note, I prefer to avoid it. And there are a few things that I've implemented in the past that are a bit more hungry than I really give them any credit to be. Other things that I do not want to add are things that are too much work for me. Just plain too much work, even if the feature itself would be interesting.
Yeah, because I mean that would often play into it. It's like, this would take me like 3 weeks of sitting here. Right, it would just take you forever to do, so why bother?
Exactly. I mean,
right.
3 weeks would already be like a low one for some of the suggestions I've gotten, which I know you wanted to get into as well.
Yeah.
So I'll save that. But basically, to name two examples, one is basically like a hub world. That's an example. That's an idea that I had based off of GTA Online, like having the game be a hub world, and then you can start different missions and types of things from that. And the other one is just also in general missions and things to do, which would just require too much effort to implement to really be worth it, especially at this point.
I've known you've been asked this like a million times, like why isn't there like a / race, right? Why can't it like just like where you're in the game, but all you're doing is like at the track or some location, stuff like that?
Yes. This exists, actually. There's a pre-made race module made by one of the JC2MP developers, actually. Was one of the first things to be written. It is ludicrously big and ludicrously complicated. And the problem is I can't just add code and then just not care about it anymore and just have it work. I would have to go through it to modify it to work with some of the custom things I do on the server in the first place. I would have to read through it to get an idea of how the resource impact would be, like how the performance impact would be, how much frame it would have to suffer if I would add it, and also server performance in general. And then I would normally have to like make some adjustments and get comfortable with the code. So when I have to do something on the code, or if people like either if I want to change something or if people ask me to change something, that I'm actually comfortable with doing it, which is just a major hassle with a gigantic module like this. It's literally like dozens of files that I would have to go through with thousands of lines of code.
Right. And so like that would take into account things like one of the questions I had was when you're just like in level flight and you take your hands off the controls, why do the planes always drift to the left?
This actually brings us back to the base game physics thing that I said before. Basically, it's an issue that also exists in the base game. It's just because either someone who coded the flight physics screwed up, or it's supposed to be a feature so you don't just go in a straight line when you're literally not at the controls. But it's just something I can kind of counteract this, and I am actually, this is a big spoiler, I'm not a big one, but hey, this is something that I was requested by Fishy for me to look into, and I do have some ideas, but generally saying it's something that's just hard to counteract reliably. Like it's just fixing a bug with a weird workaround that kind of introduces its own problems. So I
mean, anybody who's played this game realizes it is buggy as hell.
Yes.
Well, right. There's strange things happen. You know, you got the racetrack demon glitch where cars just start either stopping or spinning around like they're on a windmill. There's these strange. I don't know if you've probably seen those, like these strange holes all over the place.
Yes, the ones that just go way deeper than they have any right to be.
People like go in there and spawn bearings and stuff. So yeah, I mean the game is glitchy, and right? Why? I mean, the game's never going to be perfect, right? There's no such thing as perfection. You do your best, but so the next part I want to get into is the things that you have, as they say, nerfed. So and I know bearings and the F-33, and I even think probably some other things as far as their guns. You actually have gone, I believe, back and forth as to nerf them, not nerf them, go back and forth. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, for bearings, they kind of started off with a bit more leeway than they had any right to be. So there was, I think it was possible at first to avoid the cooldown just by respawning one. Maybe I fixed that in the initial implementation, but I think that might have been patched in pretty soon. They had twice the amount of bombs. The drop rate was faster, I believe, and there was a bit more damage. I think I also touched the damage of those bombs at some point.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to really get these things right off the factory because you don't really have any way to test them in a normal scenario, like in the way they would be used in
like
game.
hey, now stand 10 yards back. Now stand 20 yards back. Let's see what happens, right? Things like that.
And even then, you're just dropping bombs that people are standing still. You're not really like you're not thinking in the mind of someone who sees a bunch of like people standing on somewhere around on the airport, and you spawn one, and you just hold down mouse button, then respawn and do it again, just to get the maximum amount of bombs out there.
I mean, because at first you didn't even have a warning.
You
would just get bombed. At first you didn't even add a warning. Now you see like incoming bomb, and you got a few seconds to get out of there.
Oh yeah, because people did complain a lot about just getting bombed out of nowhere. And I did see that complaint. It happened to me as well. So I thought, yeah, this is something that I can address. And this is pretty much the story for all the things that happen around bearings. Like I kind of saw how they were pretty strong if applied correctly. So I did reduce the amount of bombs they could drop to make it like more of a tactical thing for people to plan when they throw bombs and where they throw bombs. And the very recent addition that happened this month, where the cooldown would be reset, like basically it would reload every time you spawn a bearing, regardless of whether it was reloaded.
Yeah, actually, I just read that changelog today that now every time you spawn one, it starts with the reloading process.
Which I think is a pretty smart way. It was suggested by someone, is to avoid people just spawning bearing and holding left mouse button just as soon as they spawn it. Like basically the way the bearing bombs were intended to work is for people to do a planned bombing run across an area, not just do an impromptu one, just spawning it and then within a meter of taking off, just bombing already. Like that's not the point of the exercise.
I'm not going to name names, but I saw people do that. I was like, wow, how the heck did he do that so fast? And so that would alleviate that type of combat. Whereas okay, I'm losing this battle. I'm going to jump up, spawn a bearing, boost out of there, but drop bombs and nail the guy anyway.
Yes, exactly. Naturally, that's not what you would call good combat. So
would you say, can you off the top of your head, maybe you thought about this one, like what is the suggestion you get the most, do you think, besides wingsuit boost, which would be great? Just for fun. I mean, heck, a lot of these things you just say like, oh well, okay, you can do it in passive mode, just for fun.
So things that I get a lot are NPCs, as you already mentioned.
Right.
It's just, especially with like slowly diminishing player counts, people want to have something in the world that occupies them other than other players. Then there's changing vehicle stats and appearance, which both are impossible. Then changing character models or adding additional character models, which also isn't possible, and racing, like you already mentioned. Like those, I think those are the top candidates for things that people ask me and that I have to reject all the times. Sometimes you have a hybrid, like people want to change the vehicle appearance by just adding like a spoiler or something,
right?
Which I also just reject because you have to spawn an object and then move it around every single frame for everyone who's nearby, which just eats frame rate.
Right. I was actually surprised the day that you added tuning. I was like, wow, because I know has been like the thing since I joined, was like, what can you do with these cars other than change the color? And everybody's like, nothing. And then you added the tuning where you could, I mean, I couldn't believe. I was like, holy cow, these settings, how are you going to figure this out? And I remember when they first got it, their cars were just like bouncing all over the place and flying into space.
That's interestingly enough, the ability to do these things was already there for, I think, 2 years now. So like they came out during one of the last big updates they did for JC2MP overall. I looked at them, but I couldn't really like make sense out of them or see a real use for them. So I just kept them out. Also, just for the sense of maintaining some form of integrity between like vehicle types. So you look at a vehicle and because you've driven it before, you know how it's meant to perform, and then you see someone just overtaking a Titus in a PBD, and you're like, no, this can't be right. What is happening here? Then at some point, the amount of requests related to that topic got a lot bigger. It just got more and more people asking me for it. And someone out there had already made this tuning menu that we're using right now. I looked at it and was like, this is fairly decent code. I have to do a few adjustments here and there to make it more performant, like basically not do things when it's not supposed to do things.
Right.
But other than that, I can just use it. So I wanted to just throw it in and let people see what they can do with it and see how people would react to it. And then based off of that response, I was gonna make adjustments to it, maybe even remove it again if it's just too ridiculous and the racing community just starts falling apart, which hasn't happened.
I would say, the hardcore drivers. I mean, I messed with it at first, and it just, I mean, not that my driving was great anyway, but it just totally ruined me, and I stopped using it. But I noticed a lot of people are really interested in one of the newer updates, which is the level of intensity of boost.
Oh, yes, yes.
And where you can literally dial it up to 11. No, you didn't make it 11. That would have been funny.
No, I kept it at something semi-reasonable. I just mainly added the ability to make it lower than normal, so you can do it in a more controlled way for the people who use it for boosting.
I think
drifting.
Too, I even asked you for that. Like, is there a way that you can just make it so that when you hit boost, you're literally not going from like 0 to like 500 miles an hour in like a second?
Yes.
I'm not saying it was my idea. I'm just saying I thought that, but this was a good variation. So the next part I want to get into is like, your updates, all these things that you do. Like, how do you go about? Is this just like, I'm sure you probably talk to Dennis and other players and so forth. It's like, you're just like, no, this is what I want. This is what I think is best. Like, what's the process? How do you go about figuring out this is what you're going to do?
Normally this happens when I'm I just let my mind wander off. Like, just I'm at home or something. I'm just not doing anything immediate. I'm just starting to think a bit, maybe like before going to bed. My mind wanders off and like thinks about these things that I would put on a server if I was back in 2014 and could redo everything that I did.
Right.
With the current knowledge that I have.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before. These are things that you've done, but you've been wanting to do for like years. You just never got to it.
And basically just apply all of this knowledge just to a fresh start. Do it right from the beginning. What would I do differently? That's what I'm asking myself. And I figured out, I could do this fancy thing and this fancy thing. And every now and then, there's something there that actually, I think about it twice and I realize this is something that's realistically doable right now. And there's nothing actually stopping me from doing it except maybe like a week worth of work. So I add that to the list. I dump all the ideas, all the details that I thought of into there. And then I just let it sit there until I get around to, look at it again. And if it still seems like a reasonable idea at the time, I just implement it. Like, this is how the things happen that I want to happen. I normally just think about them randomly and realize I can do them. And then I just do them whenever I feel like it. And the other half of ideas that come from me that happen are things that I realize when coding. Like, I code something, I look at the code, I realize I could do this differently and this, that, the other way. So I'll add it to the list, and then normally, like when I decide to work on one small thing, this suddenly escalates into working on like 10 different things that I realize I should have just done differently in the first place. And I just don't want to like hold back on doing this. I don't want to put this at the end of the queue. I just do it right then and there. Just tiny fixes, tiny things that are just a bit not right from what I think. And then there's the other half of the well, not half, it's less than a half actually, but there's a certain percentage of ideas that come from the player base. The process here is someone tells me the suggestion, I think about it. Normally, like for 90% of the things, I just reject them off the bat because I just don't feel like they're worth it. But maybe I'll think about it again. Now I'll figure out a way in my head to make this work. So I might actually just come back to it, revisit it, or maybe I just put it on the list with no intention of doing it, and then I just get used to the thought of doing it and end up doing it in the end. But yeah, often, of course, with many things, I just realize they are not feasible and just cancel them entirely. But some player ideas, or not some, but actually quite a few player ideas actually then just end up making it onto the final server in between the other things that I personally want to do.
Right. Okay, so the next part is we're going to discuss hacking. Can you confirm that there is no aimbot for this game?
I cannot give you a guarantee, simply because, well, I haven't really searched the entire internet for it.
Because Dennis says there isn't.
Yes, I know. He's very sure of the things he says. He did actually go out there and investigate at some point.
Because he's tested some on me.
Has he?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And and there's been other things that that I noticed when I was being a mod, and I brought it to his attention. And when he explained it to me, I was like, well, okay, so there's ways around aimbotting, and there's things that you can do. I think if you're knowledgeable enough and you want to really be the ultimate superhero on a video game, you can do it. So, but there's no like place where you can go and say, hey, download this, for the regular, 13-year-old kid that wants to clear out PIA in 30 seconds, other than like a God mode.
Yes.
There's nothing of that you could just go on the internet and just download and have it work. Mostly people messing with, the game files on their PCs.
Yes, for example, for the insane boost on the parachute thrusters. That happens through modifying the base game files in a way that Just Cause 2 multiplayer, the program can't block it, because by default Just Cause 2 multiplayer blocks the normal ways of how you would replace single player files.
Right, because there's the Bolo patch, and I've seen people you can use that in this game.
Yes, because that actually doesn't happen through game files. It's an external program that modifies the memory of the program. I'm not entirely sure about the entire specifics, but I think that's at least how the God mode works.
I mean, I've only seen. So that's what when somebody's got the God mode on, they're actually using that patch.
Most likely, yes. It's a very simple thing to think of. People they have it on their PC anyways from playing single player, and they're like, what if this works in multiplayer?
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
Or they don't know that they can't use it because they don't speak English.
Well, that's another question, really.
Right.
But one more thing on the technical level in regards to aimbot. I suppose if someone took the time, they could just make it happen. They could just add something that just points a cursor towards the next player. But in something as niche as Just Cause, I just don't see that happening. Nobody's really that bored. And on top of that, they couldn't actually compensate for the spread, like everything that happens around my custom hit sync, like damage drop off spread. They couldn't compensate for that. So they would be more on point with their shots, but they would still not get guaranteed hits like you can see it in some other games like Counter-Strike when people is using aimbot.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't, even in this game, I can't hit a damn thing, even when they're standing right in front of me. So the next part is like,
not just you.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I don't know how. I'm like, I saw the thing turn red. Why doesn't he, no health drop? Does the character model size, that's a big question. Does the character model size make a difference in basically the hitbox? Does that make a difference?
Yes, it seems to. You can check this pretty easily by just checking the area around which the cursor turns red, because when the cursor turns red, the way the cursor determines its color is the same way the hits are detected. The only additional factor that comes in for the hits is the spread that I just mentioned,
right,
and the fact that your cursor your screen just kind of starts shaking from the recoil when you shoot, which is just like a base game kind of thing.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. That's probably why I can't hit anything.
Oh, not just you.
And that explains why Rosa plays that little, what's the little baby Pane?
Yeah.
That's why she plays him.
Yeah, because he has a smaller hitbox. Basically, if I was to remove the spread and would stop the screen from shaking, every time you see the cursor go red and you press the left mouse button, you fire a bullet, that would be a guaranteed hit. So if you compare that to the kernel model, the gigantically overly stretched guy, you can see that when you aim at his head, it turns red. But then when you spawn a pane in the same position but you don't move your cursor, it's not red anymore because there's just nothing to hit there anymore.
Okay, so can you explain? This is I asked this question. You want to know like what do I mean by this? Like what a dev is and what did they do?
So this highly depends on context. Normally, when you're in Just Cause 2, you have three types of developers that people tend to refer to. You have the Just Cause 2 developers, which is Avalanche, the game studio that made Just Cause 2. They are just people who do this for a living. They created this game and they are long done with it. There's nothing happening to that game anymore. And if you wanted anything to change, good luck, because it's not going to happen. There's also like no real way of contacting them or giving direct feedback. Naturally, it's just the project is done. The game is out there. It's done. It's a done deal.
Are they the ones that created the achievements?
No. For the single player, yes, but not for the multiplayer.
Who created the ones for the multiplayer? Do you know?
This brings us to the next type of people, the JC2MP devs. They are a bunch of people who just like coding a lot, and they reverse engineered Just Cause, like the base game. They figured out how to make custom logic happen in this game, like, for example, how to spawn a vehicle or how to tell the game to display another player and make him move around, these kind of things. They figured all these things out by themselves without actually knowing any of the game's code. And they made this accessible to other people by exposing these kinds of possibilities through an API, and basically adding like an interface for people to create code that does things in the game. And they package all of this up in like a multiplayer mod. They created a server application that everyone can download and then just run. And they created the Just Cause 2 multiplayer mod DLC on Steam, and they also created the achievements.
I know of two. One is Kiri, and the other one is Philpax. Do you know who the other one? I think there was three for this one. Or are there more?
Actually, a ton of them. I'm not entirely sure what the responsibilities are, but of each of them are. But two bigger ones, like I think the lead developer was a guy called Trix, Trix.
Yes, I've seen him on some of videos. There's some old YouTube videos with him actually playing this game, like when it first came out.
Yes.
And Phil was there too.
Yes, most of them were there. Also, a guy called Wowit. He was the type of guy.
He's been on here. August 4th is my join date, so I'm a few days away from my 3rd year anniversary, and he's been on. Phil hasn't been on in like a year or two that I've seen. Kiri comes on now. He'll come on for like a couple months or whatever, and then disappear. But he comes on quite a bit. I think he just does it just so people can get the achievement. He came on yesterday, and I think like 20 people got it at one shot.
Yeah. That's pretty much the main reason I joins. Just to make it possible for people to get the achievement, so they stop complaining all over the place. Like,
well, that's nice of him.
If you've ever seen the Just Cause 2 Discord, like the Just Cause 2 multiplayer Discord, the dedicated one, or the Just Cause 2 multiplayer Steam discussions, you know that about 80% of the contributions there are just people asking for friends to do achievements or complaining about achievements or asking where they can get the dev achievements, to the point where it's actually annoying.
Right. Yeah, because we always see the AFK player sitting there for like a month.
Yes, and the kill grinders who came with the last sale, who just literally just sat at an oil rig and just killed each other.
I've done a million of those just to be a nice guy. I'd never myself. I remember when I got my 1,000 kill. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was just hovering somewhere in a helicopter, and I forgot even who it was. Somebody just flew in front of me, and I, squeezed the trigger, and all of a sudden I got the achievement. I was like, "What the heck is that?"
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh."
Some people tend to take these things too seriously. But to get back to the dev topic, it's Trix. He's the lead developer. Jackson is also a thing. And then there's a few more people. They're all listed on the Just Cause wiki. I would recognize most of them if I saw them. But the problem about them is it used to be possible to engage with them in a more direct way, like request features for the mod, report bugs, these kinds of things. But not too long after Just Cause 2 Multiplayer was released, Trix, the lead developer, was, to my knowledge, acquired by Avalanche, the studio who made Just Cause. So they fully hired him as a full-time developer for them. And once he got into that position, the entire Just Cause 2 Multiplayer development ceased. It basically just toned down. There were far less updates happening to the game. A lot of planned ideas that they had lined up just stopped happening. So that's why it feels so stale and has been feeling so stale for the past couple of years. Just because the Just Cause 2 developers, the backbone of the team, is basically just non-existent anymore. They don't actively work on anything.
Right.
And to conclude the developer question, the third type of developers you'll find are server developers, people who then use the framework, the tools, the API given to them by the JC2MP developers to create a server. So basically me, but also Lord Farquaad from the Panel Survival server and from the Goal server and from the Fallen Civilization server. This Russian guy who owns the Ruski free roam server, and of course plenty more over the time. J-Man 100, you know him.
That actually leads me into a little segue. We'll just break here for a second.
All right.
And I know you remember this. I don't remember how long ago it was. It was at least over a year. Can you confirm, or do you want to confirm that the server was attacked, and it was from that Russian server guy?
I can confirm it was attacked. It's a pretty simple exploit. I'm not going to go into detail just for the sake of not giving people too many ideas.
Yes.
But it's a common one that happens with Steam-based servers. But I cannot confirm or deny who did it, just because that's the nature of a DDoS. You're not supposed to know who it was. You get requests in from all kinds of different IPs. It might have even just not even be a DDoS, like a dedicated one across different hosts, just a regular DOS, but it tells you a bunch of different IPs that it came from, so you can't pinpoint any one. But yes, it was attacked. They flooded the server with a specific type of request, and that pretty much.
I remember nobody could get on. I was on. I don't remember if you actually came into the game or you came in through the console, and I know Sandy was there because I remember him just giving you, being a pain in the neck, bugging you while you were trying to fix it. But it was like nobody could get on. There was only maybe 4 or 5 of us that, for whatever reason, could get on.
It's basically the entire trick of the attack. You make the server so busy responding to certain things, like performing a certain logic, that it doesn't actually have any time to do the things it normally does. So telling, syncing the player positions between all the other players, accepting new people joining. These things just fully fall behind. So,
is that the only time it's ever happened?
Yes, that was actually surprisingly the only time that's ever happened to me, at least this specific type of attack. And I did figure out a way to mitigate it. What happened before, though, at some point the server got fully DDoSed, as in someone fully tried to take it down just by spamming requests of some point that would just occupy the entire bandwidth of the server. But all of this was caught by the DDoS protection of the hosting provider. But I got a mail for it. Because
because I remember that guy, I can't remember his name. I know it began with an H. People got these crazy names that don't mean anything.
Halkes.
Yeah, he actually came on.
Yes.
He was actually on that server that day, and he was giving you suggestions.
He is the owner of the Russian free roam server. Back then, we were still at, I guess, normal terms, you could say. I didn't actually know who he was at the time either.
I don't think he was even saying who he was when he was coming on there, and he was saying, "Have you tried this? Have you done this?"
Yes.
Almost kind of to me, it's the way he was doing it. And this is just my natural instinct. Is it seemed like he was just trying to deflect from himself that it was he that was doing it.
I mean, it's possible, but I'm not going to go into accusation territory.
No, I'm not asking.
It's he also just didn't really give a lot of technical insight on the entire thing because he didn't really know it himself. Yeah. All he said was he told it to his hoster and he fixed it for him. But the thing is, he's using a game server specific provider that basically gives him a managed server that he doesn't have to really do anything for to keep it running. And they are experienced with this type of attack because it's not unique to Just Cause servers. But my server is just a generalized hoster. You tell them you want a server, you get a server, and the server is your domain. But if I tell them, hey, I get this specific type of attack for a game server, they're like, oh, okay, cool story. That's your problem. So his fix didn't, of course, help for me, but luckily I figured out how to fix it myself.
All right, so we're going to go now into like discussing players. We don't have to be specific, but I'm going to ask you a couple of specific questions. If you could name 1, 2, or 3, any like some of the most influential players or the most influential player, do you have anybody in mind you'd like to mention and why?
I mean, one is pretty obvious. Has been
Yes.
for the past couple of years. It's been Rosa. Obviously,
Yeah.
she has just more influence over things happening on Just Cause than anyone else.
Right.
I know someone will complain about this. I know she's already typing this message if she's actually listening to this podcast right now. It doesn't matter if it's direct or indirect influence. If you tell people to do something as a direct influence, or whether they just do something because you do something as an indirect influence. If people do the same thing, like if people do something that you do, you have influence just because you do it. You have a certain influence over people, and she is definitely the type of person to influence players to just do things she likes to do. Like she hosts a road trip and lots of people join.
Yeah, or when there's something going on, she just rings the bell and people just pop on all of a sudden. All the wars that I've seen over the years, right? It could be her and 2 other people, and next thing you know, there's like 20 Malta members.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
go
ahead.
Well, that's I mean that to me that's the definition of like having power or having influence, obviously.
Right.
So
I think she's on like her. I don't remember. She announces the anniversaries. I don't remember them, but it's at least 2 years.
Rosa's been around for ages.
But Malta's been around.
Oh, Malta. Yeah, Malta is over its 3rd anniversary. It was created, I think, not long after I split from Nologam, which was in 2017.
Right.
2017. So we should be around 3 years by now.
Yeah. Do you have another one?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where we get into like the more baddie territory. People who caused issues in the past. Oh yeah.
I know where this is going.
You also have heard of these people before. So we're talking about Uguay, Marv, Valk, Valkyrie. Also, I guess an honorable mention would be people like Obeyo. You don't know him; he was active.
No,
years ago.
I remember him. I was around. I joined right. PDF was still, kind of a big thing.
Oh yeah. So PDF, that was Walker, who I mentioned, the
Walker, yeah.
PDF, but Obeyo was someone who ran Obey as a faction, which back in the days, 2016ish, 15ish, I think, also had a lot of members. Like this, basically, to give you the pattern here, an influential player is normally someone who runs a big faction and who people listen to when they say things, who holds a certain amount of authority. These are the more influential ones, and as you can tell, many of them were baddies and ended up either quitting or getting permanently punished, like Marv. But yeah, Rosa's the one who's still around at this point.
I miss Marv. He's probably one of the only people that actually really made me laugh. I even said that to him when I first met him. I said, Marv, you actually make me laugh. He's like, really? And then we became like, instant friends, right? We talked a lot in and out of the game, and he was just, literally insane. Almost kind of like a Joker type of insane, whereas, Og is more of a, he just likes, I don't think Marv's trying to, dish out trouble. It's just what he was. I think Og did it for fun. He literally told me, I'm okay, I'm getting ready to stir the pot here. Watch what I do.
Yes, yes.
And it was, for me, it was like fun to watch. Every once in a while I'd chime in, but just to sit back and watch those two. And like I said, Marv was like permanently banned, and then he just disappeared. Which I was gonna save this part for the mod part, but I think this is like a good segue. And the reason why I mentioned this is really not to put anybody down, but is I think it really changed a lot how this game is played, what people can do, what they can't do, what a mod should and shouldn't be. Was the Lateralus versus Malta / Rosa incident. I want to get your take on that first, and then I'll weigh in on it.
All right, sounds like a plan. Well, to me, it's actually not that big of a deal, honestly. It was at the time a pretty big incident. I had to take a bunch of hours to read through logs, catch up on what's happened, speak to people, and eventually come to a decision on how to actually handle it. But I think the one big thing that happened there that we learned and that we, for the most part, applied since then was that moderators should not be involved in the serious type of faction like business that was happening at the time, where you would have a lot of antagonism and just general hostilities happening. Because when you have a moderator or in general a staff member who's involved into these things, it just gives you a staff bias or staff anti-bias just by default. Even if the person themselves is not biased, you still have people who are automatically biased against them. And obviously, you don't want people to be biased against the staff member just by default. So,
well, because it did stir up a lot of anti-staff sentiment. Even the fact that you mentioned Og, or you call him Oog, but whatever, and Marv, right? I mean, they were the ones that were basically I mean, they say it was, somebody attacked they were just looking for a reason to start a fight.
yes,
and to make it, in, just turn it into, I mean, because as people say, I join in, I make the joke, Malta gay, all that stuff, right? I tease them, but, generally one-on-one, everybody's, pretty cool with each other, but they were looking to, start a fight. And if you read the log, and the reason why I say it was important, if it weren't that important, you wouldn't have put it in the, a list of, textual, you can see like actually something that happened. And, and I think one of the big changes you made was the fact that, and I'll let you go on after this, is that you used to get a notification if an enemy entered your airspace, basically your cone of, factionism, basically.
Yes.
So and so yeah, so I'll let you take it from there, and then I'll follow up.
Oh, no, finish. I was just confirming what you were saying.
Well, okay, so I mean, I'm going to say this, and Rosa, don't get angry at me and try to kill me every time you see me. I would definitely say that Rosa was 100% in the wrong. Now, having said that, I think that Og and Marv, because you can even read it in the text, they were trying to do that. They were trying to push her buttons. They were trying to get her angry.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember these. I don't even know. I mean, Rose was, I think, like 18 or 19 now. She was probably only like 16, 17 at the time. I mean, these are, basically in my mind, because, I'm an old fart. These are children, right? And I don't mean that as an insult, and it's easy to rile up a teenager, right? And I think they purposely did it. I don't think they were spam. I mean, because when you're in a fight, you've seen them, you've probably been in them. You're flying around, you're going in and out of the faction's territory, and that just kept spamming the. That was the big complaint, right? Is that they said that she was saying that basically they were spamming the fact that every time they entered their space, it would spam the chat, and really that's not what they were doing. I mean, you're flying around, you're going in and out, you get killed, you have to fly back in. I mean, I don't even see them even, because I remember I spoke to Og about this later, and he said, no, we weren't doing that. I mean, it was just a normal war. But obviously they were being real jerky about it and starting a fight, and poor Ho-Ho was trying to like calm everybody down. But I'm saying to myself, is this really absolutely like necessary? Can't you just have a war without everybody being angry at each other? I mean, it is a game. I mean, when you're playing checkers, are you trying to piss the other guy off? Yeah, you can psychologically play the game, but I mean, I think it just went over the top. I would think what Rosa did was wrong, but I don't blame her, because as from day one, because she is such an OP player. She can literally do anything. Now I can't even beat her in a damn race. I used to be able to do that. Now I can't. But she can literally just kill anybody at any time, anywhere. I mean, I've seen her go into entire factions and just wipe them out with a submachine gun. So I can see like these, teenagers, like here's a girl just wiping the floor with us, right? No matter what she's in, no matter what vehicle or on foot, no matter what it is. I just think and like you said, it did change a lot. I mean, I think now, after that, yes, there's been faction wars, but nothing like that. That was, I would say, the craziest faction war that I was actually, the beginning of the chat is me, Og telling me, we're gonna do this thing, and I'm like, okay, what's the big deal? But the moderator thing came about, which I think is kind of like lax, because there aren't wars like that really anymore. Yeah, Apocalypse still attacks Malta, and they banter, but it's not this toxic. Because Drax, I have to say Drag. I hate that name. I missed Hyperion. That was a better name. But he's the leader of Apocalypse, and Apocalypse and Malta still fight, and he's a mod, a senior mod at that.
Yes, that's why I said mostly abided by since then. These things have indeed gotten like a lot less, I'd say, critical, a lot less bloated. These kinds of wars. So as long as it didn't really affect any judgments, and Draki was actually someone who was staying fairly neutral in all these things whenever there was an Apocalypse Malta war going on, then I didn't see a reason to act yet. But to comment on the rest of it, I think yes, this was the last big like faction conflict drama kind of thing happening.
Right.
But I think at the same time it might have just been like it might have just coincided with just the departure of the last people who were actually able to pull these kinds of things off, like the opposition. So
right.
Ook, Marv. I mean, Marv got permabanned after that, so there's not really much to be. You can't really stir up too much anymore if you're just not even able to be on the server anymore. And many people also got like spooked off or just too annoyed calling bias and all these kinds of things.
Right.
So all these kinds of like, I don't even want to call them troublemakers at this point. I kind of want to just call them influencers. I don't know.
Well, they like to stir the pot. Basically, they like to kick a hornet's nest and see what happens.
Pretty much, like these kinds of people. I mean, yeah, I guess that's a troublemaker in the end. But
yeah, I mean, how much trouble can you get in? You're basically playing a video game, unless you're not doing something, evil in the background. Like trying to send nude pictures of somebody, or trying to tell this is their address, go to their house and beat them up. I mean, it's like I said, I always say that. I've said this like a million times. Like, are we playing a game? I mean, we're actually playing a video game, right? I mean, this isn't really to get this involved and this intense over what? I mean, it's not like you can, and I always said, how do you know who wins? I mean, everything gets respawned, you come back, right? You can't really blow anything up, permanently. You're back in the action in 5 seconds, and basically, well, whoever gives up first, that's the loser. I was like, well, how about if you're just bored or you have to go to the bathroom?
That's the same thing I have been wondering all along whenever I've seen these wars happening. Also between,
and I think that's why people want stats, because that's been asked of you all the time. It's statistics, how many times did I kill so and so, or stuff like that.
But even that isn't really like a smooth way to go about it. You would basically more require something like a framework, a clear beginning and end of a conflict between two factions. Which of course falls back into the territory of like, a lot of work, a lot of effort, time that I don't necessarily want to spend. But to stick on the topic for another minute, so yes, so in the end, to conclude the thing I just said, yes, it was the big war, but I think it was because people were departing anyways. It was just, if this had happened back in 2016 and people would have gotten punished, there would have been another generation of people who would have just started stirring the pot again. But another thing, and yes, it's I love how you actually have the ability to just talk about these things like, like they're a game, like they are. Like for many of the people who are involved in these things, they don't have the type of like experience you have, or the type of like wisdom. They haven't seen as much as you have, basically. So even for myself, it's still easier to get sucked into these things and feeling like they're actually really relevant, because they make up a lot of like the time we spend, the free time we spend in this game. So it kind of becomes a bit of a more relevant thing to some people than really has any right to be.
Well, I've just come to the realization I just suck, but I don't care, right? I mean, I don't care that I'm like, oh, I'm really good at this, and all of a sudden somebody's like just like whips past me or shoots me in the head. I'm like, where the hell? How did you do that? How did you just shoot me from that far away? How come you can drive better than? I'm like, I know I hit you. I know I killed you. I know I'm not that horrible, but yeah, you get somebody like I said. I can't. I've lost count of how many times I've tangled with Rosa. To the point where I found myself, even at my age, getting frustrated. I'm like, what am I getting frustrated for? It's like I said, it's not like I get kicked off and I can't play for a week. There's real no harm done. I'm like, okay, you just have to accept the fact that somebody is better than you. I have learned that before in other aspects of life, but it's like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, or just accept the fact maybe you'll get better, get good, as they always say. But I mean, really, to me, ultimately, the toxicity part, the people really getting like frustrated and angry over this to go to this level, to make it so bad where you've literally, I think, changed the landscape of the game. Because like, look, people got kicked, they got banned, some permanently banned. You get a bad reputation. It's like, is it so hard to be just like a nice person and just come in and just play and just fight? I mean, I really don't get it. And like I said, yeah, okay, so I can say that because I've been through some stuff in my life where I can handle this type of thing. But to me, it just makes me sad that I really do think that's when the game really kind of like dropped off after that, because so many of the core players just like the anti-mod bias. They were going after you, Dennis. They were saying all these horrible things. Like, how the hell do you know? Have you ever tried it? That's why we gave Odd trial mods. Like, well, maybe if he sees what it's like,
Yes.
Maybe he won't be like such a jerk and go, oh, I get it. Because I always tell every mod that joins, I'm like, okay, look, yeah, they're going to be cool with you for a while, but eventually you're going to have to rule against them, and they're just going to hate you.
Yeah, I'm glad actually that you brought this up. Like the reason why, since we've been talking about Ugin as being like the big kind of troublemaker, that the reason why I wanted to have him be staff is to see the other side of the fence, because that was something that everyone involved in that argument just didn't really seem to be able to. Like especially the opposing side, is in like the Lateralus people, but also on the Malta side and even on the staff side, maybe people were just struggling to see the entire picture, and it also took me a while. And you aren't really able to see the entire picture. You can just try to get close to it. The problem, the biggest issue that I had was figuring out the actual origin of the entire thing. You mentioned it before, the message in chat that pops up whenever you enter and leave the faction, the base area.
Because you removed it after that.
Yes, because I wanted to avoid this being a potential like source of rage after that again.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could see both sides. I could see actually all three sides. I can see people just going in and out of the base just because it's combat and they're flying around. I can see people deliberately doing this to trigger someone.
Right.
And I can see people getting triggered by it. So. Right. Those were just three reasons that were enough for me to just tone this down, or I think I fully disabled it even, just because it was the one factor that I couldn't control in this entire argument, the one factor that I couldn't monitor, that I couldn't trace back, because I obviously couldn't see who did which kinds of movements during that time on the server. And that's what made it harder for me to come to any conclusion as to how I want to tackle this, because I couldn't tell if people were actually doing it or not. I could imagine the Lateralus people not doing this deliberately. But at the same time,
if somebody told me that, if Og said, "Yeah, we did do that," or Marv, I'd be like, "Yeah, I totally believe it. I wouldn't be shocked at all that you did it on purpose." But I don't think they did.
That's the thing. I didn't come to that conclusion. I just didn't know. So I had to base it off of everything else that was happening. Because I mean, for example, Forks, she's actually notorious for doing these kinds of things, for just finding ways to annoy you by spamming you. Yeah. So I could have very well imagined that maybe even if Oog and Marv didn't do it, maybe Forks was doing it. And yeah, you can't really like see this in the aftermath. So yeah, like I said, what I based my decision on was everything that I could see, which was with the chat. Right. And on the Lateralus side, they crossed the line way too much in this argument compared to Malta or even external people who were just somewhat involved into it. Yeah, like from the chat, Malta seemed like they were the victims. Whether this was true internally is another question, but that's nothing I can find out.
Look, did people like Marv and Og really don't need anything other than, hey, you looked at me wrong, let's fight, and it basically prompts like you so I think it was like Smoke Weed or whatever. I love that name, Smoke Weed, and especially that guy, the way it was spelled. He attacked one of their faction members, just probably just flying around, whatever, right?
Yes.
And so they were like, oh, here's our chance to attack Malta. We've got the numbers, and to piss off Rosa so much that she abuses her power, and flies off the handle, and then Staff will see what she really is. Like, it's just another person playing a video game, for crying out loud. Just to push somebody's buttons. Like, what do you think is going to happen when you poke the bear? Especially a bear with sharp teeth. And I really got to the point where I was like, jeez, I sometimes question my own sanity. I'm like, I got to remember, I'm playing with teenagers here. And people, as they said in that Batman movie, sometimes people just like to see the world burn. And even if they're not doing it like they're actually like sick in the head and malicious, I think some people just like to do it for fun and say, hey, look what I did. And I always tell people, I say, look, when you're a grandpa one day and you got a kid sitting on your lap, you're gonna go, yeah, I took out that faction that was all alone. I had like a 30 kill streak. Your kid's gonna look at you like, what? What the heck are you talking about? Versus, when I was a kid, I got to meet like World War II vets and told me they actually killed 5, people in a fighter plane, stuff like that. All right, so we'll get off of that because I don't want to piss anybody off. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Well,
we
probably already have, but hey, that's the nature of these things.
Look, everybody got a pass. Whoever was wrong was wrong. Whoever was right, which was not many people. But I'm gonna name my 3. Okay, so yes, Rosa for sure, because Rosa is a cult. I would say number 2 is definitely Drac, right? Hyperion, as I like call him. I think that's a much better name. Just because he's had like 5,000 factions. Everybody seems to join him. His numbers are always up. He's literally done everything, right? From a guy who couldn't shoot to a guy who can kill everything. He's been banned. He's been banned, went from mod to senior mod, and people just generally tend to like him. He's just, he's a Turk, so he can interpret what, people are coming on and saying. So he kind of like, it's like the Swiss Army knife. He has done everything, has been everything, and can do everything, right? Except drive, which I don't know why. I would say, and I don't know why he can't drive. Like, I watch him do this crazy stuff. I'm like, how the hell did you kill all those people in like 3 seconds and you can't drive a car? And I would say, and speaking of driving a car, the third has got to be Green Wizard. When I started drifting, and first time I met him, I sat in his car and I was like, holy crap, how in the hell are you doing this? And it really, and that's what started me into it. And then I saw it, and I just saw it was just amazing. Like, how many people now, it's like, seems like everybody drifts. Everybody wants to drift. Everybody wants to drive. They want to boost and do all these different things. And I would say his influence on the servers, just in that aspect, has been like huge. Because you'll see like the difference between somebody like a PvP side of it, like Malta, and they focus so much on fighting and shooting, and they're like, you suck, I'm better than you, get good, noob, all these things. Like, they really seem to like get angry with each other. Whereas in the driving community, they seem to encourage each other more. Or don't say like, oh, you're just a terrible driver, why don't you get out of here, right? They actually want to spend the time and teach them how to do it, so they can enjoy it with them. So I think in that aspect, he was, I would say, very influential player in that aspect. That type of thing seems to draw more people in versus push them out.
Yes, yes.
So we've gone into like players that given you the most grief. That's. We won't even talk about Fox. We'll just say Fox, and everybody will know what that means. Now, if you want to mention anybody else, I do. I want to. To me, I would say those were influential players. But I want to ask you first: who is the greatest player to ever play the game?
The greatest player to ever play the game.
That can literally just do anything and is the best.
Oh, that's a hard one. Honestly, I would probably go for like a very seasoned staff member, like maybe Wizzy. And I'm not sure if you ever met Wiz. I think actually you definitely have, because he was still playing.
Yeah. No, he's been on. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I've met him.
Actually, wait.
No,
okay,
come on.
I have someone.
I'm gonna bet you. I'm gonna bet you right now $1 if I'm wrong. Who you're gonna say? Go ahead.
All right.
I know. Go ahead. I know you're gonna say. Go ahead. Say it.
King.
Who?
King Zogan.
No, that's not what I was gonna say. But he is. I mean, what he can do with an Urga is just. It's. He's literally
Oh,
he must have sold his soul to the devil. I don't know how he does what he does, but no, I wouldn't.
it's not just that, but like just in general, also in terms of like character and just in terms of how long he stuck around and still maintained his own integrity. And like
Okay,
I can.
I don't. That's not what I meant. But go ahead. I'll let
Oh,
you.
you
I'll
mean
let you
just
sing his
in like
praises
game
because
abilities?
just the most OP player to ever play the game.
Oh, now I get
But
it.
finish.
I
Singing
shall.
King's praises because he is a great guy. Go ahead.
Yes, well, I mean, I pretty much said it already. He has already been an admin on the very first stuff I played on in 2014 when
Right.
I started playing this game, and he still occasionally drops in, and he's still a guy I like to speak to. I like to just hang out with, and
Yes, he's fun.
we've had a lot of time over the days. So yeah, my praise.
So yes, Kinky's great. So yes, the greatest player to ever play the game.
In terms of abilities,
Everything. They
in-game.
can literally just do anything.
I mean, I'm already tempted to put my money on Rosa just because she's such an insane tryhard. But I know Rosa has met a match. I was thinking Fox as well, just because she's actually spent a lot of time fighting.
They're up there. Yeah, they're in. I would say you got Fox, Rosa, Sword. What a name! I thought that was always a funny name too. Sword with a V. They're all. Wouldn't say you couldn't quantify them as equals, but they're all like way up top tier players, but better than them.
Whew. That's territory that I haven't even looked at in ages.
And I know if I mention the name, you're gonna go, oh yeah.
I will go, oh yeah, but for now I'm gonna have to actually pass. Go ahead.
Okay, it hands down, it's got to be Assy, Assassinator 826.
Oh yeah.
See,
I wasn't actually thinking that he would be that much above the people we listed.
Oh yeah.
But I do know he was a very capable. Oh, is a very capable.
Literally could do anything. I mean, he could shoot, he could dogfight, he could drift. I mean, he could. I mean, he can drift a tank better than I can. On my best car, he could drift a tank better than I could. Could do anything. I mean, I've seen him take on Rosa. I've seen him take on Fox. I've even one time we actually even switched names. So he was playing as me, and I forgot who he took on, some OP player, who the hell knows. And they were like, what the heck? And it wasn't until they actually like checked, the Steam names to figure out who it was. But yeah, he is by far, I would say nobody beat. Like I said, I've seen him take on Rosa, and he would actually like switch his name, or he was on an alt account or whatever, and he was telling me what he was doing in the background, and I could just see Rosa like, what the heck? How's this guy like taking me out? I've never even heard of him before, But yeah, definitely the most OP player in my book. I don't know if Fox, is Fox. We'll just leave it there. And Rosa's who she is, and Sword was very good. But there's a lot of good snipers and fighters and people who can drive. But nobody was, to me, the most all-around player other than he. And like I said, when I say his name, you're gonna say, "Oh yeah."
I kind of forgot about a lot of the people who used to be very active, just because I'm trying to still keep track of the player base that's happening right now. To the point of just knowing who I'm dealing with, that I just keep forgetting everyone who just doesn't show up anymore.
Yeah.
And many of these people unfortunately quit.
All right, I'm gonna pick a bone with you here.
Oh boy.
It's moderate. I'm gonna take you to task for what you did on April 1st. Don't ever do that again.
Why not?
It was just horrible. I was like, I can't do anything. I mean, I'm bad at everything as it is, and then you took away all of my, abilities to be even to be slightly good at anything. I mean, it was funny afterwards because you just kept saying you were doing updates. So yes, funny. It was definitely a German sense of humor, but don't ever do that again. So okay. So we'll go into we didn't cover the we'll go into this topic of how much time we've an hour and 19 minutes. All right, we'll try to do this fast. We're going to go into like the topics of modding and moderation. What do you and staff look for? Because everybody wants to be a mod, right? Of course, they want to see the other side of the curtain. They want to see what's going on. How do they do this? How do they see that? All the tricks and so forth. So two things: what does it take to be a mod? What are the criteria they look for? And can you also then after that describe each of the roles and what they are and what they can do? If you want to get into certain details, things you may not want to get into.
Yeah, sure. That's an easy one. So, in terms of what we're looking for in a person when we are looking for new staff, the pretty much top rule that evolved over the years is these people have to solve more issues than they cause. Of course, you can't fully determine this before you actually gave them powers, but just off of looking at someone, how they interact with other people, you can tell if they tend to stir up more problems or solve more problems by being like friendly or maybe like going in between, maybe acting like a mediator, I think is the word I'm looking for. So that's pretty much the golden rule. The main reason why that's the thing is because in the past we used to have moderators who were also causing troubles. I'm not excluding myself on this either. When I was still more actively working on the server, I was someone with an attitude. I was doing well for myself for the most part, and I was doing like a reasonable moderation. But there were people who I would just like personally just be mad at. But there were people who were just causing like in the way they were approaching people, they just caused so many issues that solving these was too much effort for us versus just not having that person in staff and just solving the root issue in the first place ourselves. Of course, we're looking for mature behavior and also speech. We basically want people to convey their message in a mature way and also to have a mature message. Like we don't want people who are like behaving like kids, who also because they are of course more prone to get into arguments in the first place, but also just because they might just be like a certain situation might just be too much for them to handle. So
Right.
like optimally I would only take people who are like above 18 or above 20, maybe even like people who've actually had lots of experience, well, not lots, but like relatively speaking, a good amount of experience in their life, who are like socially more adjusted, maybe than someone who just like a teenager who just sits at home most of the day.
Right.
And yeah, the next thing that we are looking at is just a bit of like self-sustainability, people who are like able to handle most situations without having to ask for help, like basically people who are not going to be thrown off by someone who does something like a bit more out of the ordinary, like someone who just causes trouble in a bit of a special way. We don't want someone to actually just be like, okay, how do I deal with this, and then maybe even coming to wrong decisions. Like the goal is that these people can either figure out how to tackle this, or if it's really something that you can't expect a single person to solve, then asking for help, but not like asking for help prematurely just for the punishment to be like a simple thing. Like it's
Well, and unless it's obvious, it is sometimes really even difficult even to tell if somebody's hacking.
Oh yeah, of course. Like this is it is pretty hard to, with the given information, to really make
Especially when
fully
you're looking
confident
right at them.
decisions.
It's like, is it their ping? I mean, what is causing? I mean, I have times where people are like screaming. I was like, Eric, do something. I'm like, I can't tell if he's cheating.
And
I'm staring right at the guy. I'm watching him, but I can't tell if he's. I really can't. I mean, I have no way of explaining it. Most of the time he is. The player is cheating, but sometimes it takes time to actually figure that out.
And these kinds of situations, someone will have to learn to manage on their own, though. Like, not every time you encounter someone who you're not sure is hacking or not, you can't call another staff member because there might not be one available.
Right.
So you kind of just have to learn to tackle these people in your own way that just solves the issue in one way or another without causing too much trouble. But yeah, of course, it's always a struggle to handle it with the information you have, and I always try to give staff members all the information they need to handle an issue, but without having like a perfect like replay feature for everything that's happening on the server, including chat and game activities and whatnot, it tends to be very hard to make definitive decisions most of the time.
Yeah, and especially when you can just spawn a plane and fly away. I mean, just get out of the area. If somebody's, and again, right, it goes back. It's just a freaking game. I mean, I've been passive rammed so many times. I don't even care. That's not, to me, the things like that don't, make that much of a difference. But if somebody's, I mean, I ran into an incident once. This guy was in somebody's faction. He had a god mode on, and people they were literally just standing there shooting him, and they were getting pissed off. He's killing him. I'm like, why don't you just leave? Leave. Why are you standing there? I mean, if you don't want to get killed by this guy, I just said, well, okay, we'll take care of it. I didn't think it was even trial mod. I don't know what I don't. We'll go over the who can do what, but I was like, why don't you guys just leave? It's like, it's not like okay, so he's going to blow up your stupid tank and your radio tower. It's going to respawn in 20 seconds, whatever it is, right? Just leave. Okay, so. Can you and feel free to give as much information as you want as far as the roles are concerned. Who can do what? What are the roles, and what can and can't they do?
I'm quickly gonna have to backtrack actually one more time, because
Go ahead.
There's one important thing that I really want to mention when it comes to staff requirements, which is people are supposed to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
You can't hire someone as a staff member who doesn't really enjoy the game in the first place and just does this thing to be a staff member. Being a staff member isn't really a goal. Like, people who do this tend to cause a lot of trouble in the end. In the
people
long
who
run.
want to be mod versus people who are asked.
Yes, pretty much. And like, just people who want to be mod, not just want to be mod to enjoy the game they are playing even more by being able to handle people who break the rules. And then, of course, the next thing, the last thing for staff requirements is just activity. Everyone below the administrator level has to have a certain amount of activity to, like, obviously they have to be around. Like, if you're not around, you can't solve.
But it's
problems.
not a set number of minutes, hours, or anything like that. It's just
well, it's not a set hour, but since you left, we've with the past couple of moderators, we've kind of settled on rough estimates of numbers, just to have a ballpark figure to look at. So right now it's just about 20 hours per week for someone to just be around.
Oh wow, yeah. I like to say, yeah, we didn't. Nobody ever say like, well, just play when you can, And that was always one of my concerns, like, well, what if I'm not doing enough? Like, can I just, because when you're in the game. And let's say you've got your tag off, you just want to play, you don't want to have to deal with that. It's like kind of like being an off-duty cop. You can't just ignore.
Yes.
You're not allowed to ignore. That's why off-duty cops are required to keep a firearm, and if they see something, they've got to intervene. So yeah, it's like it is, and you said hired, which usually denotes pay. So were we supposed to get paid for this, or because the worst part is, like, shortly after I resigned, and to clear the record on what you guys said in the video that you guys did a couple weeks, I did quit so that other people could get a chance to do it. I had done it for a year, and one of the jokes I made, I wanted Green Wizard to be a mod so that when he was modding, he would actually have to slow down, and it would give me time to catch up because he drove so fast. I couldn't keep up with him. So I was like, well, if he's a mod. And he had to do mod stuff, he would actually have to stop to like type or do whatever, and then that would give me an opportunity to catch up with him. And it worked. It worked perfectly. I was able to keep up with him most of the time.
I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah, he kept having to stop, but he did a good job. Right? We can't complain about that. But yeah, so I'll be waiting for that back pay since you hire people. But that's the thing people don't realize is, like, you actually do stand a chance of being the most hated man on the server. People don't always disagree. It's written. Rot did a good job of rewriting the rules. And one of the rules is our decisions are final. Now I shouldn't say are, because I'm not one anymore, but mod decisions are final. And if they find that it was, you added the report option, that was a great move, because you can even say, like, and the other thing about that is you can't report when there's a mod on. So what if a mod's being a jerk? But you can always just go into Discord anyway and send a message. So again, right, it's just a game, something in the world. They're not, you can always appeal later on, but
yes, and of course the mod is not supposed to be a jerk. Like, if that's an issue, that's something you would have to escalate to the rest of us.
And that's that's objective, right?
Of course. Like if it goes for like half the player base, staff are jerks because reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So do you want to go through who can do what, or
Absolutely,
I'm sure you probably might not want to tell everybody what some people can do, but go ahead.
This is perfectly fine. Like there are a few things, of course, internally that we do, and of course the absolute list is gigantic. But on a general level, we can be fairly transparent about this. So as a trial mod, of course, you're very limited to like non-critical things. You can't really
frustrating. I'm gonna say this right. I probably was the longest trial mod in history.
How long was it again?
Like almost 2 months, if not more.
Oh boy!
Because Dennis disappeared, and I spent an entire summer almost completely alone. But I'm not going to whine because I do enough of that. So continue.
All right. So yeah, as a trial mod, you are really limited. After a time, it actually does get annoying because there are bigger offenses like kicks. Like if you want to kick someone, you can't kick someone because they just don't have the permission to kick. And this is like the go-to punishment for people who have to change their names or who are hacking. Because what are you going to do against someone who hacks? Mute them? Yeah, that's going to work. For many things, you have to like rely on other people. But this is by design, so you can't. As someone who just got essentially picked off the street to prove themselves as a staff member, you don't have the ability to shut down the server by removing the population. But it's the basic stuff like muting, locking passive, and just spectating other players. Just the basics of getting information about other players and muting and like punishing the common offenses, mostly chat offenses. The power is there. Right. For moderators, the goal is to have everything they need to handle everyday business. So they can kick and they can tamper and they can lock buy menu and they can lock teleporting. They have a bit more access to like informational things that you maybe don't want to give to a trial mod. But other than that, there's not like there's a lot of step in the overall amount of commands, but the step in power is not that big, surprisingly. But a moderator still has everything they need to be self-sustained for everything short of like a real like big repeated rule breaker.
And now, like I said, maybe I didn't finish the thought, but it was after I resigned where mods were now allowed to get gifted a game so they can get donor tag.
Oh yes.
So thank you for that.
You are fully welcome. Don't worry, we don't have a lot of donations happening anymore, anyways, and the entire concept.
There was. I know Drac got quite a few once that happened. He was like,
and Dennis got all of them, and he's not playing any of them. So
yeah, right.
There's that. So moving on to senior mods. Senior mods have just a small amount of additional tools. It's not a big difference to moderators, but they have some small tools that I'm not going to list like in detail. But two things that stick out are being able to mute PMs, forcing people into passive. This is something that's kind of needed around like events and these kinds of things. Being able to permanently lock the buy menu or the teleporting or the passive. Basically, like the senior mod can deal with even like repeated offenses of the same rule. Like if someone is just very like persistently refusing to learn. And that's it already for the senior mod. And then the admin is the role is supposed to be able to cover bigger decisions and like just bigger things happening around the server. Like in the back, they are also supposed to handle like decisions outside of the server, like decisions that affect the community more or how we organize things. But on the server themselves, they are able to permaban and unban people. They can rename factions, change faction leaders, remove faction-based vehicles, and have access to more informational things, also AP related. For these rare scenarios, which really don't happen these days anymore, but used to happen, where you just have people who are that resistant, like who are resisting arrest that hard that you need to apply like stronger tools, essentially.
Right.
Then you're moving on to senior admin. There's pretty much no difference to regular admin. You just have a very minimal like increase in internal like commands, things that are not very like public. And then the last level is just myself. I have basically things that I don't want to have to give the control to anyone else over. Like the environment on the server, daytime, time progression, these kinds of things that could potentially be really annoying to people, and that I also normally just don't actually want to touch in the first place. Just things that need to be controlled in like some exceptions, I suppose. I have God mode, but I actually am not very happy using it.
Why don't you do that when we go on road trips? Why do you have like a death wish or something?
Well, God mode is a bit of a dick move, to be honest. I really don't have a lot of
if
people.
You're PvPing, but if you're just driving around, what's the big deal?
Well, then I could also go in passive. Like, what kind of hypocrite am I if I like advertise passive to everyone, and then I am the one person who is an asshole and just uses God mode?
So what? Oh, okay. Speaking of God mode, that's one thing I'd like to segue into is your God tools. Some of my, I will tell a quick story. I don't even know if you remember this. This happened like for over 2 years ago. I was driving you around in a tuk-tuk. You were working, and I don't know why. There was like nobody on the server. It was just you and me and like a few other people. And I was like, I was just practicing driving around, and some idiot just kept strafing us. And I'm like, hello, are you there? I'm like, can you do something about this guy? And you jumped out. You said like pull over or stop or whatever. You got out and you unleashed your crazy rocket launcher. And you said, it's not a rocket launcher, it's a God tool. I'm like, well, it looked like a damn rocket launcher to me. It shot like, I don't know, like 8 rockets or something like that. And the guy just exploded. I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. I'm like, I thought that was part of the game. But you were like, no, it's a God tool, not a OP rocket launcher. And the other part is your blue laser eyes, which acts kind of like the air propulsion gun, but way more overpowered. So if you want to talk about those two things and maybe some others I'm not aware of.
Those two things are part of the same thing. Like the blue laser eyes are also part of the God tool. It's basically a random idea I had back in 2015, I believe, where I was thinking, well, how cool would it be if I could just force a vehicle away? Like as if, I think I was playing a Star Wars game a lot at that time. And I was like, hey, what if I could do something like the Force, just in a different way, but also like just my player being able to force push something away. So I was never intending to put this anywhere. I was just trying to, play around with it. So I created it on the dev server, right? And I started tossing vehicles around. I was like, holy heck, this is amazing.
Right.
So I started adding more modes. I added a mode to pull something. I added a mode to force something up and down at ridiculous speeds. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty fun. But wait, the entire thing of pointing my mouse somewhere and clicking at it and making it do crazy things. What if I just make an explosion happen where I click? So I added that as well. That's the cannon mode that I rarely use. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty dope. So
because literally you could do whatever you want. I
could technically. I could do that anyways, but the God tool is just the small, this tiny thing where I give myself the power that I could take, in like a limited amount. As you might have noticed, I still have to click and aim at something, and
right.
Unless I use aimbot or my aim is like, would actually be any good. There's still limitations. I'm not sure if you were there, but during one of the 1v1 PvP events, I was just flat out killed by someone when I was trying to kill them with God tool, just because I physically wasn't able to click at them before they could snipe me away. So
I've killed you once or twice, and we were actually fighting, but that was probably just random luck.
I'm not unkillable. I'm also terrible at PvP for the most part. But
yeah, I found that shocking when I found that out. When I actually killed you, I was like, "What? How the heck did I kill you?"
Well, I don't really like. I used to be more active, but this is just don't really see a point in like putting that much time into like PvP and practicing and tryharding it. But then at some point I started implementing the custom missiles, the ones that are also used by the rocket launch. Basically, being able to spawn missiles myself and make them go wherever I want them. And I needed to test them, so I was like, maybe I could just add a mode to the God tool that spawns a missile. So I had it spawn missiles in front of me that just shoot where I point them.
Is it 4 or 8? I don't remember. Was there a number?
There's no number. It's just once per, as long as I hold down the mouse, every 150 milliseconds or so one spawns. There's no limit to it.
You can do that in DAGs, can't you?
No.
I think you can fire the quad launcher like a shotgun. I've done it.
But that's like that's just behavior of like the built-in base game weapons. The only reason that it's different in DAGs is because I left them standard. But on ASF, I added the custom like lock-on system and blocked, being able to fire unguided missiles just randomly wherever you want to, for the sake of balancing, because the unguided missiles from rocket launchers to fully ruin the combat balance, because people just jump and shoot a rocket.
Kind of like the grenades, just lobbing them all over the place.
Exactly, minus the fact that the grenades, like the grenade launcher, has a very limited range and a very limited area of effect, whereas the rocket launcher was just ridiculous in comparison.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, I added that, and I was like, what if I can also just make missiles come from the sky at a ridiculous speed? So I added the orbital missile mode. I found these pretty funny. And then at some point, I added one for, I think actually this is the most moderative one. I can click at a vehicle and it gets removed. At least if it has if it's owned by a player. So I used that a lot.
I think I've seen that. I don't remember. I think I probably.
It's very sneaky because it doesn't do an effect. It just removes the vehicle.
Yeah.
But when you randomly see vehicles just constantly disappearing where I'm looking and I'm nearby, then.
Yeah, I think you used that on me before. Like, what the heck?
So
is that? Go ahead.
It's very convenient when you're like at MHC and someone spawns bearings, or when in general when someone spawns a bearing where they shouldn't, like at events, for example, you can just click at them, they're gone, and it's something that other moderators envy me for, and I can see why, because that's actually super convenient.
As much money as I promised to give you, don't ever give me those abilities, because I would abuse the living hell out of it. Just because it would be fun. I don't want to hurt anybody. Moving on to that part, I want to first go back into the mod stuff. Why in the world did you remove the filter?
It's pretty simple, really. I explained this at some point, but not too much of an audience. Basically, if you want to filter human words, human speech using code, you just run into a wall. Like, it's just a very futile thing to attempt to do. And everywhere where you can see these kinds of filters applied, or like also on other platforms, on bigger websites and stuff, it's always flawed in a way. You either end up with the result that you always end up with exactly two results. One, the more effort you put into it, the more you're filtering things that you don't want to filter. Like, I had people message me saying this message got filtered and it was clearly nowhere related to an insult. Because the particular like sequence of characters matched one of the 10,000 ways I added of like spelling the N-word. To block it.
There's got to be, I don't know, some of these teenagers out there are like literally just geniuses, and how many different ways they have come up with being able to say the N-word.
And that is exactly the second thing I was going to say. Regardless of how much effort you put into it, there's always ways people can figure out to just circumvent it either way. It's simply because like the computer just can't really figure out, like a computer doesn't have a sense of language and context, and it just can't understand these things. It can just block a sequence of characters that appears. And because we humans can think of like so many different things to put something to sneak them past the machine, it's really just futile. And I was just the reason I removed it was just because it was a pain to try and keep it, keep it from blocking unrelated things, but at the same time blocking things that we want to block, because it was just not working. It was very futile.
Because that's not what you actually told me.
What did I tell you?
You told me I want you to do your job. What am I not paying you for?
Well, I mean, it kind of leads to it, right? Because if you don't have a filter, the staff have to deal with it. But the thing is, a human staff member is a lot better at doing this because, well, it's a human. It can read language.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that leads to the other point. Why just the N-word? Why are there? I mean, because there's plenty other. I mean, yes, I've seen it, and I've had to do it before. People get overly anti-Semitic, but there's other words which I don't. I mean, I realize the N-word has real power, kind of like the F word, right? It's got real. People just say you N-word. I'm not gonna say it because we all know what I mean, but
of course.
It does hold a lot of power, and it means like that. What is the ultimate thing I can say? And it's like, so you've only got I don't ever see people saying like, and I'm going to say the words because I'm not going to say G, there's like saying like gook or chink or Jew bastard or, any other, being like Italian, like who's ever Italian, they call them like Dago or Wop or something like that. But, I could see why the N word, but can you explain like, if you were a mod or other people who are just joining or playing saying like let's not use that type of language, and on top of that, you're going to do that, but why is cursing, like actually using swear words like the F word or any of those, why is that allowed versus racist words like the N word?
So the reason why the N-word is blocked is specifically because people use it to try to be edgy.
Right.
And I really don't see any scenario where you would use it as an well, not even as an insult, as in general. Like even if you're not insulting someone, but you're just talking about someone, referring to them as like your N.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's as they say, the hard R. Where you actually put the R at the end versus putting an A, like like they do in rap songs, right?
Yes,
they use it. They use the word all the time. So and yeah, again, so why would somebody just say, "Yo, what's up, my N?" To say something like that, of course, like you said, that goes back to the first thing you said is just to be edgy. So it's really not necessary, right?
And at the same time, it does have a big impact. Like it's to me, it just feels like a word that is really impactful compared to the F word or
right, because you just want it because it really denotes hate. Like
yes,
you want it. Like, I'm actually going to. This isn't. There's no way around unless you're doing it that way. And it's funny because you can do it. And I forgot who. I think it was maybe even Dennis that explained it to me. Because you obviously, unless a moderator is around, you can do it in local and PMs unless somebody complains that, hey, this guy is calling me the N-word every 5 seconds.
Yes.
I'm looking at you, Fox. Or saying it in faction chat, whatever. But you can do it locally. But the way it was described, like, well, you can do it in local if obviously you're not, nobody's complaining about it, nobody's saying anything to you, you're not being you're not doing it to be a jerk, and as long as you're not near a spawn point or a heavily populated area, you want to maybe clear up what can and can't be done, or does that pretty much cover it?
I mean, the reason why that's not covered is simply because it's not feasible to have moderators cover these kinds of things. Like, I mean, we also kind of treat these spaces like local and faction chat as an unmoderated space where we don't really interfere. I mean, faction chat specifically, because how would we interfere with faction chat? But the overall goal of chat moderation is just to keep global chat I wouldn't say not toxic because it ends up getting toxic anyways, but keep it free of certain types of just bollocks that you don't really want to see there. And I mean, especially with the N-word, it's just
it's
people just overuse it. Like you go to many corners of the internet, just edgy kids try to use it to be more edgy, and it's just. I mean, I'm not even, and that's the thing. Many people start jumping to conclusions. Oh, he's trying to overcompensate because he's German, and Germans are notorious for being racist. Yeah, that's wrong. And I'm also not one of these super leftist. I'm not leftist at all. But I'm not one of these people who are super overly politically correct, and the types of people who would jump on the Black Lives Matter bandwagon and these kind of things. God. I'm not that type of person. I just really it personally annoys me when I see people just use the word in that way. That's and being the owner of a community, or even before during Nologam, just being the guy running the server, I had the power to just block that word from being used, or make it punishable to use that word in a wider area. And who would disagree with you if you do that? So yeah.
Well, you gotta remember too is you've got a reputation to protect. You're for lack of a better term, you're a public figure.
Pretty much.
And as you probably see in the news, I know it happens here in America. You can be called whatever, and you lose your job. There's hate speech and all kinds of things like that. It's like, this guy allows people to say this stuff, right? And your employer may find out, or and that could bother him. I mean, there's all these different things you have to be really careful, and that kind of even leads me now into the what is considered homophobia, and why there's things versus saying gay versus fag versus homo. How do you settle that type of chat?
There is no specific stance that I'm taking on that one. Well, or that I officially wrote down anywhere. Of course, I have a certain personal opinion on it, but essentially, it's kind of up to the moderator to who ends up seeing this.
Right.
As a baseline, though, I would say if it's obviously used as an insult, you just call someone gay because you used it as a synonym for them being an idiot or whatever.
Right.
That's obviously offensive, and
that's how it used to be when I was a young person. We always say, that's gay, or you fag. But it really, honestly, at that time, it really had nothing to do with homosexuality.
Exactly.
It was basically you're just a wimp.
And that's the other thing. Like, that's something, maybe I have moderators who might moderate this, but I personally wouldn't, because I understand this context. I know these people are not actually trying to insult gay people. It's just
Right.
something that, the young people say sometimes. It's a bit edgy, but who cares? It's not good. Nobody's going to die over
Yeah, I mean,
this.
look, I'll say I am guilty of typing in Malta gay like a million times, right? Just because, I mean, everybody does it, right? It's the thing everybody does. It's instead of being toxic and attacking them, just say Malta gay, and I think Rosa knows it's a joke, or her
I
favorite
hope
line
so.
is, they hate us because they ain't us. I mean, it's an old saying, but it makes sense. So yeah, I could see that the context matters, right?
Yes.
People saying
Absolutely.
no homo. It's like, well, it's like no, people say no, I love you, dude, or whatever, no homo, whatever. But I do think saying gay is not as bad as actually calling somebody a fag or saying faggot.
Definitely. Like, faggot is kind of a word I kind of treat like the N-word. It was also one of these words that I actually did have in the filter, like words that I
Yes.
just don't
Yeah.
really want
Yeah.
to see,
hmm
because
Now,
whatever way you use it, you're trying to offend.
now, some names are actually still filtered. Like if somebody tries to put the N word in their name, that's still filtered.
Oh yeah, yeah. I left the filter on names just because there's less problems with that. Like, there's few instances, or very few instances actually, maybe like 2 or 3, where something was filtered out of a name that I didn't want to filter. But at the same time, it has filtered some things that I didn't want to see. So basically, just the ratio of hits to misses is much better with names, because people actually, like, they approach their names in a different manner than they do what they say on the server.
Well, yeah. I mean, because then most people are like, what? Negro just means black, which it does, right? Just saying,
Yes.
and I always make it say, look, there's no such thing as a black person. I mean, people aren't black. They may be really dark brown, but if you ever saw like an actual black person, you would think it's really strange. They're not black. Just like there's no such thing as a white person. Even albinos aren't white. You know, there's no such thing as a white person versus a black person. As far as like they're not black. I don't know why they actually. I always say that to like if I talk to people at work. I've got a couple of black people here that I work with that I'm kind of close to, and we have these discussions. I'm like, what are we allowed to say now? Are you called black, African American, all these different things? Because not every black person comes from Africa. They come from other places in the world. So even to me, like calling somebody just like, oh, you're just black, like saying like, like for instance, I'm white, right? I would be considered a white person, even though I'm fairly tan. My Armenian ancestors come from the Caucasus Mountains. I am considered Caucasian, even though everybody thinks I'm Hispanic. But oh god, everybody speaks Spanish to me. I'm like, look, dude, I'm the biggest gringo you ever meet. Don't speak Spanish to me. I have no idea what you're saying. I don't know. I no clue. I'm not. I mean, I can't type. I can't write. I'm not really ever going to speak another language. But yeah, I think and that's what the hard part comes into the mod part of filtering chat, is that you're basically having to assume somebody's intentions.
Yes.
And
Well, at the same
that's
time,
the hard part. And but if they've got a reputation, that's different.
and you're also just, you're in charge of setting what the baseline is of what's normal and what isn't. But my personal take on it is, I want people to be like, I want my staff to be, on the more lenient side. There are people who are just way too sensitive about certain types of words, and it's just known to cause more issues than it solves. I just prefer to filter like the tip of the iceberg and leave the rest up to people. Like, even if people are getting into an argument, hey, let them shout at each other. And this is also like kind of answers your other question regarding the F word and like just in general swearing.
Right.
I don't see a reason why I should actually just work against that. Like, hey, nobody ever died over an F word. I know it's a bit of a big deal in the US, or at least it used to be. Just using that word out in public, or it even worse, being on like film or on TV, basically. But I personally don't see a harm in it. Like, it's if you overuse it, it doesn't really make you look a lot smarter. But
Yeah.
it's just a word people use to express themselves. And hey, if you, in theory, you're not supposed to be playing this, as if you're a kid who is not supposed to know this word, and it's not my responsibility to educate kids.
Yeah, that's
so
the parents' responsibility. I mean, because like I said, when I said to you in the chat before, we talked about this last week. What we were going to do and talk about. I said I can't imagine ever. I mean, because I swear a lot. I mean, I just don't do it in game. I asked you and thank you for not using it here because I really think it's just it wasn't necessary. Yeah, if one slipped out, no big deal. But I don't think I've ever found myself so angry that I could actually type it out. Like, I mean, it's kind of like I watched this comedian recently. It's like, this generation of people don't know what it's like to slam a phone down in anger. It's like,
Yes.
you push a button. I remember slamming a phone down in anger. It's like, well, go to hell, and slamming the phone down. And it's like, really? I mean, I don't feel it because if I get stub my toe or hit my thumb with a hammer, like, yeah, I'll scream an expletive. But it's actually a thing that you do versus like somebody crashes into a tree and they just go F. And I'm like, how? Well, it's like, really? I'm like, did it actually make you feel better to type it out? I mean, I remember it's like, punch a wall or a pillow or something like that, but to type it out. But I get, if you like, you're giving somebody a hard time typing in, saying like, you're an effing idiot, whatever, stuff like that. I get that, but to be angry and type it, I don't think it has the same effect. Like, again, not being able to slam a phone down versus, I've got to click call cancel. It just doesn't seem to have the same effect. So it's almost 2 hours. Let's get to the end because I don't want to get people to be bored. Even though I'm having a good time. I hope you are.
Absolutely.
And I know you discussed this in the other podcast that you did, but this whole part is like really like what is the end game, right? At some point, as everybody knows in life, everything has to come to an end eventually. Now, even like I said, in a couple of days, it'll be 3 years since I've been here. Even as much as like 2 years ago, I've been in the game, and I've got screenshots of it when I'm completely alone. I am the only person in the game, and then and it's happened more than once. And then you get these sales, right? And or then spontaneously, you'll have 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, 50 people. I think at some point the past 6 months or maybe even a year, there was a sale and there was like 120 people on.
That was in March, yes, this year.
Yeah. And I was like, and then I'd see, in chats over the weekend, there was like 150 people. And I remember when I joined, there was always like a minimum. I mean, like 70, 80, 90, 100 people at least, And so, yeah, so there has to be an end game. I know you covered some of this, but really, I mean, is what you said, well, I got to see when player, numbers go down, it really is nobody's playing, but it's so hard to predict because how many times have I been in the game where people like, I haven't been here in 2 years. People still play this game, or why do you people play this game? And I don't really think it is about the game itself. I mean, it's part, I mean, obviously, and I really do think it's really this because it's so free. And I really do think a lot of people come here actually to be with each other. It's very social. I don't remember who said it. Somebody said it one time. It's like we should change this to a Alpha's chat server.
Yeah, I heard that one before.
Yeah, because people just because they just come in there literally to spam retarded stuff, whatever it is. They really just want to be together, and it's like, well, there's plenty of other games like that. I don't really play any of them, but I know a lot of people do. But this is where they all met, and this is where everybody comes together, and they really enjoy. Like they know how to play with each other in this game because they've done it before, and they're either really good at it or they just enjoy it. I mean, everybody takes a million screenshots because of the beautiful views. It still looks good after all these years. It still kind of looks like your high school sweetheart. And I really think that, it's like, well, when, and I know you kind of answered this, but, really, can you honestly say to yourself, I really don't know, because if 3 years ago I was in this game alone, and now, now there's another sale, right? That seems like they're having more frequent sales, and people buy this or people rebuy it and they come back into the game and they're like, I haven't been here. I've seen people say, I haven't been here in like 4 years, 2 years, 6 months. People go away and they come back. It's like, oh, I remember that guy, and they come back. Like, how could you really, like you say, well, I'm going to wait till everybody's, nobody's playing. And, like I said, because that happened 3 years ago. So, how could you actually say that you would end this? Because, I mean, there's people like, I think, Rot's going off into the military, and
Yes.
he's even said to me like, I'm not coming back this game. Like, and that's the joke. I was like, yeah, you'll be back. Everybody always comes back, right? They always seem to come back.
I mean, just on this specific one, well, he will come back, but like many people, he kind of just quit the game.
Yeah.
So when people quit the game, it kind of just means they will drop by again in X amount of months, maybe even years, but nobody will ever be back to the same extent they were before.
Well, I've seen like we'll take like Wolf for instance, right? He's one of the drifters in ESS.
Okay.
He was gone for a really long time, and now he's like there like constantly. But he was gone, I would say, at some point for like a year. And I don't go poking my nose in people's personal business. Sometimes I'm like, "What were you doing?" And some people like they were in school. I don't know if you know who Opes is.
Of course.
Right.
The French guy who is punished a lot.
Oh yeah, big pain in the neck. He does it on purpose. But he's going to be like a doctor. You would think somebody who's going to be a doctor would be a little bit more mature. I know, right? I mean, he's literally like he's not an idiot. I think he just again just likes to be a troublemaker. But he was gone for like a really long time. He's like, oh yeah, I kind of finished with school. I just want to poke my head in and see what's going on. And and obviously I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I was like, God, I almost feel like a personal responsibility to keep this thing going as long as possible. Because other than your time, does it actually cost you any money to keep it going? And time is money. I get it, but I mean, do you actually have to like open up your wallet and type in your credit card number somewhere?
Right now, no. I suppose this covers the like better section of the endgame part, which is basically just having the server run, just having the server be a thing people can join as long as the literally just cause 2 MP is still a thing, is practically no effort whatsoever. Like just there being a server that you can click on in the server browser takes me no effort. It doesn't require active maintenance. Things very, very, very rarely break. And if they break, it's normally because of something I changed the week before. It will not just randomly crash unless like the last time it crashed was after nearly a year, like just a couple of days short of a year. And that was just because I did a change that under very certain circumstances caused a server crash. Even if it crashes, it comes back up. The host it runs on is currently paid by my employer. That's the asterisk here. Like it's free for me while I still have a server. But then at the same time, due to just the nature of my hobbies, I will always have a server somewhere. So I probably won't run out of like just a place to host the server at. And it's also like not just crazy resource intense. It will just continue being a thing as long as I don't stop it.
Because it's not even like plugged in under your bed or in your closet. It's someplace else. It's not even like you're even paying for the electricity.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's just part of the server rent, which is quite high. But like I said, right now I'm not covering this. And if I was forced to host my own server, I would just go for something that's cheap and that would cover other needs of me, of like my personal life as well. So it would kind of mix in.
It would have like multifunction.
Yes, I mean, that's what the current host does as well. I do way too many things on there. The 2 Insurgency servers I mentioned, they're also running on there, for example. All the Terraria servers run on there. A bunch of my private stuff runs on there. So it's like a one solution for every problem kind of thing. So it's kind of like a part of like just my personal life.
So basically, there's no way of knowing. Like you don't really like would there be like what would be the one thing like okay, that's it, I'm pulling the plug. Would it really be only just who's playing, like if it's like there's nobody playing?
I mean, I guess for myself personally, I'm already done with just the game itself. So like it's not really a question about playing, it's about coding for it and moderating it basically.
Right.
Personally, in terms of playing, I've exhausted every last bit of fun that can be had from that game. I wouldn't even look at it anymore if it wasn't for the position I'm in.
Right. That makes sense.
I guess I'll elaborate a bit further on this one and have a reply in like multiple segments. So I've been keeping track, like just in terms of like the raw player base, the amount of people and the types of people who are playing. I've kind of been keeping track of the Steam charts and the overall players, and you could see. Of course, there was the trend was there were way too many players in 2014, and then they just dropped off within months because they got bored. Because that's how people's gaming habits are. Right. Most people just play a game for a week or a month or maybe half a year. but then they just quit doing it unless it's like a game that employs ways of reeling people in for a longer time, like a level system and these kinds of things. And even then, I mean, there were servers on Just Cause who did this, but they just weren't appealing enough for people to stick around. So that was the initial trend. Then from there on, it was just a steady decline interrupted by sales. This decline was very minimal. You would only notice if you were with the community for years, literally, or if you, of course, look at the graphs. But the decline is still happening. And also the impact of sales is diminishing. I guess the one in March was like a really big deal also because people were, because of the entire Corona situation, people stuck at home, people looking for things to do. So they just, picked up Just Cause for a quid off of Steam and then tried out the multiplayer. And there's a lot of people had the same idea. It was also the first sale since winter, I believe, when it comes to Just Cause.
Yeah.
So that might have also contributed. But since then, we had 2 or 3 more sales, and they all just didn't impact that much. The type of players that you mostly gain these days are achievement grinders who just want to pick up the game to get an easy achievement progression, or maybe not even want to, but they get the base game, which adds the DLC to their library, which adds the achievement, which reduces the achievement stats. Like some people are just crazy about these things. So there's people asking either how to get rid of to do the achievements quickly, or how to get rid of the game from their library entirely, so it's not counted towards their account anymore. They even message the Steam support about these things. So, for the player base, for the type of people who are playing, I would say there's definitely an evolution that happened. I mean, we did kind of touch upon this with the entire Lateralus thing of just the troublemakers kind of just having vanished because they got bored or just punished too often and felt like they were being the ones who are being attacked. Without looking at why that happened.
Yeah, I've got some other theories that maybe we'll talk about it another time on certain people quitting, and I'm not trying to out people, but I think some of the overpowered players, and there's many of them. I'm not even close to one of those people, but there are some people who just exploit the fact hey, let's just go take out a bunch of randos. And they're like, what the heck? This guy just flies out of nowhere and just, does all these crazy things. And we just can't compete. I mean, it's just really well, go into passive, it's like, well, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to just sit here and just have some guy who's, can literally take out just about anybody by himself. And to me, I would say and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that factors in even to player retention.
No doubt. I'm fully with you actually on that point. That's something I always think of whenever I see just people teaming up to bully randoms. Like this random was maybe even having fun on his own, just stupidly driving around. Right. And then of course his fun is gone because someone just constantly keeps killing him just because he's so bored he doesn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And of course that affects player retention a lot. When people just feel like from the perspective of the player, they join this game, they're like, oh yeah, this is interesting, but they don't really have any attachment to it. Maybe they don't even care about the social interaction of the players. They just want to drive around. Right. And someone just stops them from doing that. They're like, okay, what the hell? Why should I keep playing this? Quit, uninstall, done.
Because saying something like, well, just playing passive, and it's like, well, okay, but now you've just literally cut their game in half. That maybe they were trying, like I said again, they were trying to figure something out. They were trying to do something again. Maybe they were just trying to I've seen
blow up gas stations.
Yeah, you always see these 2 Turks or 2 Russians off somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you can just tell that because sometimes even their names are even similar, or they look Turkish or whatever, Russian, crazy Russian language, at least, or they're backwards R's and stuff. They're just hanging out, and then somebody's like, oh, I see 2 people who, I don't recognize. I'm going to go and kill them, and then you just don't see them anymore because they just got so fed up with it.
Yes. Naturally, I don't blame them for it. But yeah, that's, this factors into a point I was also going to make, which is the type of players my server appeals to. Because as much as I like to have a server that appeals to the broadest, amount of people, there are limitations, and the server is definitely geared towards the more hardcore, more PvP type of player base, but not hardcore enough to play on a server that's only about PvP, like RLS. But the free roam PvP type. Right. With the additional factor of factions be a thing. So, ganging up, looking for friends, strengthen teams, these kinds of things, giving them a way to organize their groups. And this worked very well in the past because there were players. I mean, we talked about them before, the influential ones, people who could rally people for their cause, who could just unite people into a faction and unite people to have fun together. Of course, also with the always existent antagonism towards other groups of players, of course, because antagonism creates bonds.
Yeah, it does. It does,
But
for sure.
these types of players have just disappeared over time. This is why we only arrived at like Rosa in terms of influential people right now. I would say, like right now, you still have people like Knu, for example, and his entire ESS gang. And if you like, some of the Turkish factions are actually somewhat influential.
Yeah, sometimes their numbers are. I don't know if you remember, there was a guy. His name was Nord.
Nord, I think that rings a bell.
He had some other names, and he was like, he was 250. He had like one of the biggest factions.
Yes, because he recruits all the
Turks, because
exactly.
they all speak Turkish. So hey,
Yes.
we're Turk, you're a Turk, we're angry because communism, whatever the hell they have over there. Let's take out all these Europeans and the random American that joins.
Yeah, like let's just team up and be strong against the rest of the people on the server. Yeah, and that's obviously a strategy that works. One that Draki kind of segues into by doing the same, but having a leg on both sides, because he's obviously someone who's mostly involved with the regular like English-speaking global community part of the entire thing. But he still has the ability to communicate with these people, to understand these people.
I think we even said that when he was considered. It's like, it would be great to have like a Turk, somebody who spoke Turkish.
Oh yeah. It was a great benefit that that I had in the back of my head. Like when we hired Rocky, I mean, we gained the benefit of also just being able to speak to these people. It's not like a critical type of thing, and we've been fully fine without it before. But in like the recent couple of weeks, months, it was always such a good ability to have. Also, right now, with there being some kind of like tension between WAM, for example, and some of the Turkish people who just don't really seem to get along. Like it's just great when you can just send some of your moderators to just go to them and speak to them and like figure out their side. Oh yeah, he's
look, he's not the only one, right? I mean, I think even people said like Nana and Manta Ray. It seems like they're on their own planet. I even said to him, like, do you guys have like a show or something where, it's like, hey, watch us say the craziest random things. And then one day I actually said, I'm going to give it back to them. Right. And I got in their face and I started saying the craziest random things I could possibly say. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing what you do. You just come up and they'll say something like, Michael J. Fox is a toaster. And I'm like, what? Where are you coming up with this stuff? I'm like, do you guys have like a radio show or some sort of like, you're doing like a video podcast where they say, follow these two lunatics and watch what they say. They're going to say the most, irreverent, crazy, outlandish things you've ever heard. And they're not the only ones. There's other people. This new guy, I guess this guy's not new. He said he's been around before. He's touting that he's got like 2,000 hours, whatever. But, and that goes back, and it's like people are just looking for a place to be a nut.
Pretty much, yeah.
I've got this issue, or I'm and the worst part is like I'm such a terrible slow typer, and I can't keep up with these guys. I'm sitting there trying to read the chat, and I'm like, what are you guys even saying? And a lot of times it's just you're a noob, you're an idiot, you can't play, you can't do this, whatever. But sometimes people come up there, I'm like, where did you even come up with saying something like that? It's like, that's supposed to be like like the whole edgelord thing, right? People just coming on and just saying the most random trash toss thing they can say. I'm like,
just for the sake of like saying something and maybe getting attention for it.
I'm like, where are your parents? I mean, as much as like I said, as much as I have enjoyed playing here, because I gave you my reasons before, but I was like, I would never ever let my kids play here. and it's I'm not being insulting to you or even the game itself. It's like, but I can't believe it was even like a shock to me when I joined. I was like, God, these people out here that actually talk and think like this. I'm like, why is their parents letting them? I was like, is anybody watching you? Like even some of like the pornographic talk is like over the top.
Well, some of these people aren't actually children anymore. That's the part that's surprising to me sometimes.
I wouldn't say. Yeah, I mean, look, we've got. I mean, I'm not going to call. I know someone who's actually on the server that's almost 70.
Is it Bandit?
No, Bandit's in his 50s, late 50s.
Actually, true. Yeah, you're right.
And I was even speaking with this player, and he goes, "Oh, I'm older than that." And I'm like, "Well, how old are you?" And he told me his age. I was like, "Holy!" And I think there's two. I'm not going to out the other person, and if I said them, maybe I'll tell you afterwards. But I know there's two players that have confirmed to me that they're like literally either in their late 60s or mid to late 70s. But that's the rarity, right? The majority of people are like 30 and under, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I was a teenager too, right? I spoke like that, when you're off somewhere, but you're at your parents' house, you're playing on your parents are paying for the internet and the computer, and you're in there doing and saying. I get gaming. I mean, I did that, right? Every at one point sat in their bedroom and played video games. But I'm like, don't they even like care that you're saying or doing, saying some of these things? I'm like, well, how do how do they get away with it? I mean, I'm not trying to pick on anybody or saying like I'm shocked, but it's just one of those things where I was like, hey, when I first joined, I was like, oh, there's just a bunch of people like, just, playing a game and doing crazy stuff. And then I was actually really surprised at, and another thing too is like, and I always say this as a joke because I am American. I do find that Europeans on the most part are pretty much more intelligent than Americans. They tend to speak more languages. I was even like shocked how many people from different countries actually spoke English. But I was really kind of in shock of some of like the mindset of some of these people, and that the fact that they'll literally just say or do anything. I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't be shocked in this day and age, but I do find it, I don't know, maybe disturbing. Because a lot of these people, even when they're talking like this easy wham guy, he actually seems like he's really intelligent. You know what I mean? I mean, like I said, I mean, he's not. I mean, yes, he says dumb things, but he actually seems like he's kind of like an intelligent person. I mean, like Og and Marv, for as much as they were troublemakers, I mean, they were actually intelligent guys. Og was very intelligent. We had many discussions, outside of the game, going into really deep subjects, but it's like you're wasting all this talent, this brain work to go in and like, yeah, we're gonna bully this other girl into like abusing her powers. I'm like, really? There's nothing else you can. I mean, just game, dude. Like you really have to be so toxic is what I'm trying to say. And but at the same time, these people flipped and flopped. How many enemies has Rosa or these other Drakas had, and now they're friends? I mean, it goes back and forth.
Less than she had that. But at the same time, I would say overall it's less enemies than she had than enemies who were enemies with her and then just quit the game entirely.
Yeah, I think it.
I mean, but like to get back to the entire player base thing. I mean, you had these types of people pretty much all the time. Also, just people just talking weird things, but they. In the past, they kind of used to go under in the entire faction talk or just people hanging out having fun talk, and it was
right.
It didn't feel as annoying as it does these days because it's literally the only thing that's happening in the chat. So this is the type of thing that I'm trying to say that's happening to the player base, because the more desirable people have stopped playing. So the ones who run activities, who run factions, who like have their own agendas and don't just do what someone else does. These kinds of people are just super limited these days, and because of that, there's just not much activity going on. And this is pretty much what's happening to the player base. So you're gonna have a reduction in people who drive the community, and an increase in people who just do random things and don't really communicate. Which is also a lot with these Turkish players who just don't really connect with the other side of the player base, so to say. In the long term, on this aspect, all I can see is basically a takeover of randoms. Basically, just randoms being the dominant species, if you want to call it like that, on the server.
Yeah. Yes.
And it used to be different. It used to be that these randoms were always in the majority, or pretty much always.
Right.
But they wouldn't feel like they are because there's something else happening. But without people making activities and people making things happen, just people having their own will to make things happen, things don't happen, and everything seems dead. We kind of try to counteract these things with events, but these events are super time-based. When you go back in time to 2016, maybe 2017, you always had people just being there, and other people would join because they were there. There were, of course, peak times, but during these times, you would have the same types of people just being there, just ready to have fun. You don't have that anymore. Like these types of people quit playing, including myself. Like myself, King, many of the people I just did like these impromptu like trips and like road trips and deliveries and like, half role play types of things. These people don't exist anymore. And and then instead these days, I mean, I kind of retreated from the game, but these days nobody really like knows me as the type of person who was doing these kinds of things anymore, because just like everyone else, I just stopped doing it because it stopped being fun. I mean, there are many reasons why people might stop playing, but the base reason why people stop playing is just because the game is boring. And that happens to everyone. And unless you have more new players starting who than people who quit the game, the player base will just diminish.
Yeah. Well, I guess hopefully that won't come anytime soon.
Well, I mean, you wanted to hear predictions, so I'm gonna actually go out there and try to make one. I'm gonna say by 2021, 2020, it's 2020 right now. By 2022, it's gonna be super boring to play the game. Like, it's just gonna be randoms everywhere. You're not gonna really want to come back. Sure, there are gonna be people who are returning after like 2 years or 3 years of being off, but they're gonna stick around. I apologize for the noise in the background. There's an entire fire convoy driving past.
I can barely hear it.
Okay, that's good. To me, this was super loud. I'm going to check out what's happening soon. So, actually, we have to quickly interrupt. I think they stopped outside my door. Bear back.
Is your house on fire? Do you need to go? Run for your life, Alpha.
All right, I'm back. It's the area where I live in is like a bit of a ghetto. There's a lot of like emergency responses happening around this area.
Oh, so your house wasn't on fire. That's good.
No, they drove down the street. Okay, let me try to continue smoothly so the cut isn't too noticeable.
Okay.
Just trying to pick up where I was.
You basically said 2022 is when you think everything's gonna drop off.
Yeah, my prediction. So yeah, that's pretty much my prediction. Like, I'm just going to assume that even though people are going to return and people will look at the game again and be like, oh yeah, this is fun, they're going to quit pretty soon because there's just nobody else to have fun with. It's this entire concept of the server. I guess I didn't quite touch on that yet. Is the server, the concept of the server was to have fun with other people. It was never meant for people, or never specifically designed for people who are just out on their own. It was always meant for people to have fun because there are other people to have fun with. It was never around activities that you could do by yourself. And naturally, this is the same effect that you have with many games where you need other people. Like, for example, any kind of like competitive shooter where you need opponents to shoot. If there's nobody to shoot, who are you going to shoot? Exactly nobody. Right. You're just going to stop playing the game. And you always have you basically have the opposite of an exponential increase in players. It's an exponential decrease. You have, when people stop playing, other people will have more trouble finding people to play with and have fun with, and that's going to make them play less. And then other people will have, and then the remaining players will have even less people, and then suddenly you have nobody. People, like, it's not as quick as you would anticipate from what I just said. People are very resistant to this type of thing, and as long as they still have like maybe just a handful of people who are just able to have conversations with them, it's already good enough. But it happens, and it's unavoidable. And I mean, let's face it, the game is ancient. The game is not fun forever. Players who enjoy, like, players who are in the target demographic that I want to aim for, which is like teenagers and young adults who are communicative and want to have fun by being social with other people are just not going to be there forever.
Yeah.
So that's my 2022 prediction.
All right, well, Alpha, this has been informative. It's been fun. I hope you got to relax and enjoy yourself, and hopefully this answers a lot of questions that people have been asking for years. So I guess we'll just end it there, and thank you again.
Thank you for actually making this happen. It's actually a pleasure answering these questions. I hope maybe we get a chance to answer some questions that we didn't manage to cover in our already fully blown time window by now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about an hour, and now it's
Same.
at 2 hours. I was like, all right, we should cut it short. Now it's 2 hours and 25 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna let you go, Alpha. Thank you so much, and I guess I won't be back until Monday, so I guess we'll see what the result is of that when I get back. Thank you.